Good evening, everybody, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl number 38. Let's go to the World Cup. I've never been to a World Cup, and I'm going to go to one this year. Much to my surprise, I always said, I can't imagine going overseas to play Blood Bowl. That sounds difficult and expensive, but this one came round, and I decided I needed to go, so I'm going to the World Cup. So I don't know what to expect or what it's going to be like or what I should fear or be ready for. So I thought, let's get on some people that do and talk to them. But I also desperately wanted to get on my good friend Sol. So before we talk about the World Cup, I want to talk to Sol. Hello, Sol. Welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl. Lovely to have you here.
Lovely to have you here too, PC. Lovely to see you on your own broadcast. I hope that's going well for you.
Yeah, the people that keep turning up hoping there's someone other than me must be really disappointed.
We're
Every,
gonna, we're gonna make it up to them one day.
every time there I am. Now, you are not only, as we were talking about before we went live on the show, not only a professional gamer. So you've come to Blood Bowl by quite a sideways route for most people. Now, there's loads of routes into Blood Bowl. You hear all the time about people that play 40k and suddenly realise they can't carry a wardrobe of figures for the rest of their life, and that perhaps something a little more contained is the way forwards. Or Magic the Gathering people that realise actually playing cards is silly and they should play something on a tabletop. But you came to us from Smash Brothers, didn't you?
Yeah, something along those lines. I've been competing for a long time in just the Smash Brothers scene, the FGC fighting game community for those that aren't versed. And long story short, my friend kind of pulled me into one of our local bars, and they had this kind of commission going on, this league, and he was like, "You got to try it. You got to try this game." And I said, "Okay, well, how do I get started? I guess I'll give it a go." I mean, I, I was initially really resistant to the idea, but he just kept insisting, and I was like, "Oh, fine, I'll do it." And then it just became what has now turned into a 4 year addiction. Yeah, just absolutely taken over a huge chunk of my life because I just said yes to my idiot friend in a bar.
But I mean,
4 years?
yeah.
You're a noob.
I was going to say, there's Geggster thinking,
It's very
blimey,
new.
I'm not sure I've even, thought about Blood Bowl in the last 4 years. It's been so long. Um, so you've gone from the fighting game community, the FGC, which is very active, very competitive. There's a lot of money around, a lot of pressure, a lot of profile, to a game involving rolling dice on a board with a bunch of middle-aged nerds. Why are we retaining your interest?
I mean, because one, I'm a nerd too, and I'm not exactly getting further and further away from middle aged, but I digress. Because a game's a game's a game. It doesn't matter if it's electronic or if it's on a board. I mean, I'm an avid lover of chess. You know,
Yeah.
doesn't take a video game. It's just anything where you have the ability to break down nuance and complex mechanics. Anything where you can kind of delve into those complexities. I adore that. That's the kind of thing that sparks my passion, and Blood Bowl had it in spades. There's a lot of complexity. I mean, it's look at the end. Anyone can win at the end of the day, but as far as like your options and optimizations go, it is a complex game. It's incredibly deep. So it pulled me in hard and it pulled me in fast.
And again, hopefully the robotic voice thing has been solved again. If not, do let me know in the chat. So does the random number generator bother you? You're used to a game where your skill, your control maybe is in charge. And I mean, one of the things I love about Blood Bowl is that fact, as you said, that anyone can win. No matter your skill level, you're still beatable. I might one day even beat Geggster. But the RNG, some people hate it. Is it not something that bothers you coming in from those other, perhaps more exact games?
Well, that's the thing. Nothing's truly exact. Even chess isn't exact. If you're on white or you're on black, you have a 55% to a 45% win rate. You're starting stacked one way or another.
Yeah, white OP.
And so, yeah, white OP needs nerfs. But long story short, like no, in a fighting game, you can both throw out unreactable moves with two frame differences that can create a difference. That can basically create an outcome that was unreactable, unmitigatable in a way. So no, the RNG is an element in everything, in your card games, in your video games. I mean, it exists just to what degree. And at the end of the day, with Blood Bowl, it's fine to embrace RNG. I mean, Jesus, I don't. And I'm sure none of you. This must just be like somebody playing with their Tinker toys here. But the Pokemon scene is atrociously RNG heavy. I mean, like these people that go to like Pokemon Worlds, very popular, gaming format, gets a lot of viewership. They'll like hinge games on like 60% moves, 70% moves all the time. So it's not even the most RNG infested game I've played, which is really saying something.
That really is, yeah.
Yeah, but no, Blood Bowl, you know, part of it is about learning to mitigate the RNG, and then part of it is about learning to handle when it screws you over, anyways. You know?
Now, despite not going to the World Cup, you are an expert opinion. That's the other reason I wanted you in tonight. Because, joking aside, you are the world's best sevens player, are you not?
Said this before, but I'll say it again too. I'm also the world's fastest three-legged dog. It's an honor to be the champion of this competition that virtually no one is competing in. Uh, and I humbly approach you, and I await my crown at the end of the podcast.
It turns out I didn't know this because I don't look at those things. But it turns out, according to Mike, he told me when I was joking about that before the show that I'm the sixth best seventh player in Britain, having
And you
played.
recently called
Six
it
whole
past the
kings, mate.
parcel.
I did say it
Davies.
was like pass the parcel, yes, or tic tac toe. Look, it's fun. It's a good entry level into
Yes.
Blood Bowl. But I think we all know there's a couple of races that are particularly good at sevens, and one of
Which
them
I
is
happen to specifically play.
one of the ones I am very frightened about at the World Cup. So you are also here for your expert view on a race that I call those rat bastards, and I think you call Skaven, don't you?
Yeah. Call myself the rat bastard. The Skaven are just what I play.
Okay. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll get some insights on that as we go along. And also, of course, just your view on the World Cup and on all things is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've kept two lovely other people waiting, but you've seen them before on One World, One Blood Bowl. So first of all, welcome back to the lovely Mike Davies, our statistician, Blood Bowl's maybe nerd of nerds, beardiest of the beards. And we're going to spend a lot of time this evening, hopefully, poring over some wonderful data he's pulled out about the World Cup on his tableau vivite, which is one of the best sites in Blood Bowl, with all sorts of data presented in all sorts of fun and exciting ways, but without a Venn diagram, which did upset me because obviously Venn diagram's the greatest of all diagrams. The first one I ever understood in maths, and possibly still really the only one. If it's in the circle, it's part of that. It's nice and simple. I love a Venn diagram. But we're going to be looking at all of that. Mike, how excited are you? You're off to the World Cup, I believe.
Yeah, I'm on a team with Eyeball Paul and Minimorg, which is very cool. And my son Dementor, who is in the chat. And then a friend of Paul's, and my good friend Kismet, who's a fantastic painter. So that makes up our six. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I was there in 2019, and I was there in 20. I was there, but not playing in 2015.
Wow, so a two World Cup vet.
Yeah.
And this time
Yeah.
going very much with youth to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my other son Linus dipped out because he's off to uni and he's probably going to stop playing for 4 years. That's the nature of these things. But yeah, he decided he would skip this one. And then so yeah, we got Paul and me Morg on for a bit more youth.
Dementor, of course, you were telling me came third at Thrud Bowl, which is a very
He
fine
did.
placing indeed.
Yeah, very chuffed with that. With Tomb Kings went 501.
And Minnie Morg, of course, who I love, a lovely young man from the London area. Recently, the best under 18 at the NAFC this year,
Yeah,
pipping
absolutely.
Thomas W in a rather shocking turn of events.
Yeah, he loves his snotlings, and he is taking those to the World Cup. So that should be lots of fun. But it's an interesting one because last time I was there with basically with Team Wales, and we were sort of trying to be, top 20, top 10, that sort of area. We ended up coming 15th out of 240 or something teams,
Wow.
which was good. We were pleased with that.
I bet.
But as Paul was saying in the chat earlier, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. There's a
Of
few
course.
teams who are going to get in the top 20, but it's it's hard. And so this time I'm just embracing the social side and just going to have a lovely time with lots and lots of fellow nerds and just meet up with lots of people and really enjoy the weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's 100% the reason I'm going. I'm going with some people that I think will be fun to play Blood Bowl with, but we're not taking it too seriously. We're not going too competitively. But of course, that brings me on to the lovely geggster, doesn't it, sir?
Hello there.
Hello. This is not your first World Cup, not your first rodeo, sir, nor indeed your first One World, One Blood Bowl. Welcome back. You're off to the World
Nice
Cup.
to be back.
You're off to the World Cup, I believe.
I am, yes. It'll be my fifth
Wow.
of five. Yeah,
You are.
so I was there in the first World Cup in 2007 in Nottingham,
And how many were there with you?
well, so in 2007 I was in my local London league, the Black Shirts. Uh, so yeah, that's what I did in 2007. Did that in 2011. In 2015, I was a ringer on a French side. That's back when we started having cross-border teams. So yeah, I was in a ring on a French side, and yeah, I guess last time I was on All the President's Men, and I'm on that side again. So that's with my good friends Joe Manji, Purple Goo, Lycos, Jim Jiminy, and this year we've got a French ringer, Gorgrix, who's a fumbler and going to rock Tomb Kings at the World Cup. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fantastic event.
It surprises me a tiny bit because, of course, All the President's Men has always been seen as somewhat of a pseudonym for Team England. Is
Okay.
that still in your head a thing?
No, it's never really been that way, I don't think. Yes, we've got a lot of the people that are in it, but we've travelled. Not the French ringer. He's new to that team this year, but we've travelled extensively all over. I laughed. Is it your first foreign tournament? Did you
Yes.
say?
Oh, yes. Well, I
Okay.
mean, I sort of count anything north of Watford as foreign.
Okay. Right.
So if you count UKTCs and NAFCs, no, but definitely the first one I've left Britain for, yes.
Okay. Well,
It,
I've travelled a bit,
yeah.
and my friends we've travelled extensively. We're friends more than we are. We're part of Team England, but don't represent it.
Okay. I mean, interestingly, my partner, who has always sort of mocked the idea of travelling at all to play Blood Bowl, or indeed to play Blood Bowl, and just me in general. But there's one, she does love to go to the Christmas German markets. And a friend of mine who's
Okay.
on my team for the World Cup happens to be partly hosting and organising a one-day tournament in Vienna on December the 2nd or 3rd or something. And she does love Vienna. So when I mentioned that, there's just a chance I'm going to go internationally and play some Blood Bowl just to do that, and to go to some Christmas markets as well with my beloved wife. So check this space in a few months' time. It may be that I can say yes, I've gone overseas and played Blood Bowl. But right now, yes, north of Watford is what I think of as a big trip for Blood Bowl, really. Although Bromley in South London, that frankly that felt quite foreign too. I wasn't very well actually. I ended up throwing up during the third game. I was really quite ill. And then as I left to come back home, I threw up twice in the street in Bromley as I made my way to the station. And no one
But you're
batted.
not blaming Bromley for that, are
No
you?
one. All I'm saying is no one batted an eyelid.
Right.
No one was surprised. It wasn't unusual. No one asked how I was. People just went, "Yeah, it's Bromley on a Saturday. That happens," and walked on. I was obviously devastated. It was a humiliating, horrible thing to happen. But yeah, no, I'm not blaming Bromley, but others have. Just saying, others have. So, the World Cup, you're going with a team that I would think of as quite competitive. That's why we cut to you. Are you going to try and win? Have you won one before? Is it something you're...
I haven't personally. Half the team have.
Okay.
So Jim Jiminy, Purple Goo, and Joe Manji won the second World Cup in Amsterdam.
The one where you weren't with them because you were the ringer on the French team.
No,
I was going to say,
no,
bit of an error there then, wasn't it?
no. They had a fantastic team. I was part of my London League at the time. We had started travelling, but they did their own thing, and uh, we no. So half the side have won it. The, those same three actually were third or fourth in the second World Cup. In the third World Cup, with only with a player missing, one of
Yeah.
their best players. One of their
Right.
players couldn't play, and they had a ringer Italian that was a lovely human being, but not the strongest blood bowler. So they only had 5 men on that team and still came third, I think.
Are you saying 5 men and an Italian?
He wasn't a very good
Uh,
Italian.
he's a terrific, Fabio, a terrific chap, but
Lovely human being,
not the strongest blood
but
bowler.
you don't count him as a man when it comes to the people you count playing Blood Bowl that day. Interesting.
No, that's not. I don't think I said that.
Okay. So this time you've got the team of your dreams, though. These are clearly people you've honed and chosen, and finally they might carry you to a victory.
I would suspect that we have a 1 in 50 chance of winning, much like many of the other very strong sides. I would also for a start, it's a crapshoot, and there's 24 teams that can probably win it. I said on pre live, every tournament I've ever won, I've been lucky. This one, you have to be the luckiest because there's so many strong people, so many
Makes
strong
sense.
teams. You have to have a good draw and have to be lucky at the right times. The winner will be lucky. They'll be very good, but they'll be lucky.
Now, I didn't necessarily mean to go ahead there this early, but before we do cut, I have mentioned that I like a Venn diagram. So we are going to look at some lovely statistics from Mike's tableau. And one of them is, someone did ask, am I going to pull together, say, 10 teams to watch at the World Cup? And I sort of had a look. I don't know, half the people think I do, but I know some people, I've heard some names. So I had a look through and I did pick out half a dozen teams or so. And then Mike just made all of that redundant by coming up with a accurate statistical prediction as to where every team is going to finish. And weirdly, his statistics agreed the top 6 I'd picked out were in the top 10, plus some teams of people I didn't know. So I think that's a much better set of data to use. And of course, it's true because it uses maths and statistics. Therefore, you're prepared to put your name by this, aren't you, Mike? Because this will be how it all finishes.
Yeah, with about 1 million caveats, but yeah, it's the best we've got, absolutely.
So just before I show you that, this is the Venn diagram, because I do love a Venn diagram that I put together, which just shows why everyone is here this evening. It's this lovely piece of information here, which, as you can see, shows the Venn diagram of people going to the World Cup, people who have raw sex appeal, and people who know what they're talking about. There I've put Sana, and I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, Mike, you don't float my boat. I've put you in as both going to the World Cup and knowing what you're talking about. Sol obviously not going to the World Cup, but I think we can all agree he has raw sex appeal.
Thank you.
I've never seen the man with arms on a shirt, and frankly, I never expected to. The shirt, indeed, at all. Is
I was
quite
going to
rare.
say, you're lucky you got the shirt today.
I am. Well, only lucky in some ways. Okay, we are hearing that Kalorn says he'd give you one, Mike. So if you're short of offers in Spain, there's one that will definitely be available. Then, of course, I put myself down as both going to the World Cup and having that raw sort of older gentleman sex appeal that, let's face it, I do. But I freely confess I don't know what I'm talking about. Leaving the only one that I think is the perfection of all 3 of those wonderful abilities this evening, being my good friend Paul, who is, of course, going to the World Cup, definitely knows what he's talking about, and has undeniable bare sex appeal. So that's what I figured would be a nice Venn diagram to show before we got into the.
Sorry, my fault.
Before we get into the slightly more serious business of what Mike has put together for us. So what we've cut to now is part of his tableau, and it's one particular tab on it that has only come live this evening. Might be a little difficult for you to see on there, so I won't make it any bigger. I'll just explain, because this is a talk show after all. What he has done is he has taken the 6 people who are in a team. He has allocated each of them their highest NAF rating according to the NAF site, and then he's averaged that across the team to come out with a power ranking for each team. If there's 7 in the team, then the best 6 get to count, because let's face it, person 7 is just bringing the beer. And then at the very, very top, we get Corcoripau from France.
If you do Control Plus, then it'll get bigger. If you click
Oh.
on it and do Control Plus, you'll zoom in.
Oh, look at that, see? Now it's actually good content, not just content. So Corcoripau with the likes of, very, very famous players from the French scene. So we have Olivier Dulac and Sam Dulac, the Dulac brothers, of course, very top of the rankings. First person to break 300 NAF score. Playing alongside Bibi and Burpif, also incredibly well known. Karak, I don't know as well, and Simon ACP, I have heard of, but don't know personally. But an incredibly talented French squad coming very, very top of the rankings. Some very, very talented Italians are coming in second, the Holy Six, with the likes of... it just goes so quick now, it's at a big size. How about if I do this instead? That's easier. We've got Matty 8, Moloch, Phoenix 11, Barbosa. Then we come to Chimera. Now this is an interesting squad. 2 from Switzerland with Jacero and Strider, Strom from Norway, Harty and Justicium from France, and Triple Skulls from Denmark. I had them down as my number one pick, actually, even ahead of the French. I think that just looks incredibly powerful. Then we have another Italian, the very well-known Tylea team. They travel a lot. They centre around Spartaco and his insanely aggressive style. But
Did they win it
Durold,
last time?
Cantonland,
They
Liam, and
won.
Owen.
They didn't win it last time. They were the champions for the World Cup 3.
Right. I thought 4 was France, wasn't it? Because Justician was on it.
French won. Justicium won last year, but not on Chimera.
Right. Then we have the Mad Hateful Seven, our first 7 squad coming in from Spain. I confess I don't know any of those. They weren't one of my picks. And then we have
Duke Luthor.
all the
Duke
president's men.
Luthor.
Sorry?
Duke Luthor, the Spanish chap. He's incredibly strong.
Yep.
I can't see the sheet, but I know
Okay.
Duke Luthor's in that.
Also,
that
yes, he
side.
is. He alongside him is Blappy Metal, Bletos, Gilles Cassiari, Javin 23, Shirokov, and Samayans.
Yeah, I only know a couple of them personally, but Duke Luthor's very strong. The great thing about the Spanish is they have such a great scene that they have so many great players that barely leave Spain.
Well, we're going to see them all at the World Cup when over half of the multiple thousand attendance. I thought 2,400 is the number I've heard throwing around. Mike's nodding at me, which is great content, obviously, on a podcast. Thanks for that. So yes, about half of those are going to be Spanish, and then half the remaining ones French. Two very strong blood bowling nations. So we'll have to see how deep that depth goes. The 6th pick, which I don't know if you can see as well, Geggster, is all the President's Men. With, as you said, yourself, Jim Jiminy, Joe Manji, Lycos, Purple Goo, and Gorgor on it. Then we got another French team, this time centred around Clemento, Jeff, Silcoon, Zoul. Again, names that you see at lots of team tournaments. Very strong.
That's Lizaz.
Lazaz.
That's the Toulouse. That's the Toulouse League.
Yep.
The French, they've got several very strong leagues. Lizaz won the first World Cup in 2007.
Okay.
I don't think any of the same players are involved, but that demonstrates Lizaz won it as a league. So that league's very strong.
And then we have Alfea coming in, the Italians, of course. Another well-known name with Panico Black, Dion Lord, Bad Storm, ATP, Jena. Hamster Taker's a new name to me, but perhaps not to you. And that's followed by Sol, our first American. So perhaps you can give us some insight here. I believe you've played at least one of these because we've chatted about it before. They're called the Old Guard. They're averaging 230 on their NAF score. And they have Grither, Hoshikomi, Flying Dingle, Father Galus, Falcorn, and Delivus. Any insights there?
It's a strong side. The American, well, I imagine Sol will better help with a bit more on this. I played a couple of them, and they're very strong players. I do think the American scene perhaps might help inflate a few points here and there because the meta is a bit different in the US. Geographically, they're separated from the French, the Spanish, the Italian powers.
Yeah, I've heard there's a big old ocean between
There's some
them.
very strong coaches for sure.
There was recently a bit of a controversy on one of the Discords I'm on, where a certain Artemis the Black coach has chosen to discount all American results ever based on the fact that the top lizard coach in the North Americas has played 19 games, but none of them in the last 4 years. He took this as evidence that everything from America should be discounted. Sol, you had a reaction to that?
You know, that's art. That's Artemis Black, all right. Love that guy. Son of a bitch. No, that's fine. Regarding the team, yeah, Grither is an amazing player, really solid contender, and one of the best in the United States. And when it comes to the top end of the states, things are good. Things are solid. It's the problem with the stateside meta, because I mean there is a validity to the citation that the metagame for the Americans is behind. It is. On average, the tournament scene is just not on the same level of difficulty as the European scene. It doesn't mean that there aren't like similar top ends or that there aren't players of a competitive worth Of course there are. Grither heading out there again amongst them. I absolutely give like my full condolences to for being kind of put down for where he's come from because he's an amazing player, fantastic coach. I would say that at the end of the day, we just have to simply acknowledge the truth, which is that yes, the American metagame is behind. I'm not sure exactly why that is. Maybe it's less game prevalence, less. It's harder to catch a tournament. I have waited about a year now just to get one good 11s tournament in Florida. Almost a year. Everything else gets classified into specialists, sevens, things like that. I mean, they love their wacky variants, but the problem alongside that can sometimes be that, are we really getting in enough conventional practice? So, yeah, I mean, there's a point to what he's saying, actually. I'm sure that it was expected that I'd, kick back against that a lot, but, sevens is great. Agree with you, Tibham. But at the end of the day, it's still not 11's Blood Bowl, 11's Blood Bowl is where more of the skill is at. Less variance, less RNG, and so
I mean,
it's...
I do understand the prevalence of sevens. If you're traveling, across 2 states just to go to a tournament, then putting something on the Friday night that people can enjoy makes huge sense to me. But then at the weekend, I would expect to play sort of a slightly more normal version of Blood Bowl. And it does seem Americans do like their really out there rule sets.
Yeah, it's... God, it's impossible to get a rule set without, like, a ball that jumps out of your hands and bites your ass 10 times unless it's a Tuesday. So, that's true.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've got to say, I played a couple of the chaps on that team, and Grithor is incredibly strong. We played in the Chaos Cup final a few years ago. He won that one. Very strong coach. No doubt, he's one of the strongest coaches there. My point wasn't the American coaches won't be strong, as Sol says. The top end's the top end. They're strong. It's that you look at the points. Now you look at NAF points. Of course, if Gritter's been hoovering them up because he's been playing
Right.
less strong coaches, in rounds 1 to 4 of his tournament wins, then he's going to have a higher NAF ranking than other people, perhaps.
Yeah.
So would you expect them? I mean, they're in the top 10 of Mike's entirely valid, totally 100% factual statistical analysis of who's finishing
Well, I
where.
wouldn't put ourselves in I wouldn't put my team in the top 10.
So have you been hoovering up unneeded and unwanted points then, is that?
Well, no. Our team is probably less practiced, perhaps, than it has been in previous years. Jim Jimney, I love him, but he hasn't been. He barely played this edition.
And I hear Joe Mangi's gone all... Isn't he playing rifle shooting or now or something?
He plays MCP a lot. He's enjoying that more, I think. He's not as... he's still... Joe Mangi is, without doubt, one of the best players in the world, even not practiced. But he's not practiced. Phil, Purple Goo, he's super practiced, super pumped. Can't wait for it. He'll definitely go 405.
So he's good, yeah.
He will obviously lose a bunch because he's well practiced and probably our strongest informed player.
I just think
he will just get diced throughout the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he wants King Ghidra to feel better about his life. I think that's probably Phil's greatest mission now. I'm going to rip...
In the top 10. I don't know about the Americans. I wouldn't speak for them. But for sure, Kokorapau, Chimera...
Althea, Tylea, these are definitely going to be the names up there, aren't they? Yeah. I expect the same. I think we're going to see some Iberian domination this time round, which wouldn't surprise me at all. There's such strength in depth in both Spain and France, and they're coming in numbers. So you can imagine at the top end, they've got everyone they want to have there on those teams, I think. So, Sol,
you need to carry on down until about 15th, though, when your worst nightmare comes in, which is the first true pun of the top team.
I'm going to go back to them in a minute, but we're going to get a little quicker through once we discuss the very, very top end. Sol, I just want to ask you on that then. They've been put in the top 10 on their NAF rankings. Do you expect this what I'm calling Team America, the old guard, do you think they're going to bang that? Do you think they're going to live to that billing? Are we going to see them up at the top end?
I don't, but we'll see. At the end of the day, it's possible. I think that they are, anything in Blood Bowl is possible. I do think the European meta is advanced enough on an average that when you spread that average across 6 to 7 players, yeah, I think they're going to have a little bit more trouble. But maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, look, Crither and I have gone head to head twice. Phenomenal coach. I'm not putting anyone down. I just have maybe an even higher degree of respect for like the likes of like Purple Goo, right? And it's just one of those things where
I'm reading a subtext that says I've played him twice. He's all right, but yeah,
no,
I could take him.
no, he's good. Nope, he's a fantastic coach.
Okay. Let's go back to the data. Have a little
Geggster.
look at the teams under
He's
there
also a
because
terrific human being.
yes, I had him on
Wonderful.
One World, One Blood Bowl. I really got on with him. I thought he was lovely. So I expect him to be bang for buck. He did not strike me as all mouth and no trousers. I think that man can play Blood Bowl. Whether he's got 5 friends with him that can do exactly the same, that will be interesting to see. I hope they can.
That's what
It'd
I'm curious to see too.
be
And that's I
great
guess,
to see some
what-
Americans up at the top end.
at the core of it. I guess that's what I'm asking, right? Is everyone else going to live up to that same standard? And maybe, but I couldn't say that I bet on it. I don't know.
Now, I'd also heard some distant rumours of maybe a Floridian World Cup bid. Is that anything you've heard anything about, or does that sound like something that could ever happen?
I mean, we're always doing our best to strike out into the Blood Bowl scene and make our scene relevant, bring people to us as well, showcase the states. It wouldn't surprise me if that was on the card somewhere, but I'll tell you something, I'm not the guy to ask. I'm not
Okay.
the guy in charge of that, so who knows?
Well, the Geordies did
I've
announce
got
their
one
World Cup
question.
bid on
I have
my
one
show.
question.
Come on then.
I have
Yes.
one question that would automatically disqualify anyone from ever hosting or managing the World Cup. And that is, do you want to run the World Cup? If they say yes, they are clearly bad and should not be trusted with the World Cup.
I don't know if he would want to, but I will say this, James Luft would be every bit qualified and capable, and there's nobody I would personally trust more to handle if it were on the table.
Wow.
Trick's got to be to run
Fantastic.
an American Open or like a large American 11s team tournament first, though, isn't it?
I mean, the Chaos Cup goes very well in the States, doesn't it? That gets well attended and is well run, as I've heard.
That has also recently shifted over to Florida, coincidentally.
Yeah.
It'll be exciting this year.
So there is an experienced gaming team running large-scale events in Florida, which also happens to be where my in-laws live. So not that I've got any horse in this race whatsoever, but obviously I never want to fucking go there, but the wife does. These
The
things
sheer
happen.
numbers, though, for next time
Yeah.
are just going to be mad.
Now, I didn't
400
understand
this
something,
time.
so I just smiled and looked pretty. You two smarter people were talking about a Fibonacci something to do with the numbers
Yeah,
for
I
World
noticed
Cups.
it. The first World Cup had 270 odd. The second World Cup had 450.
Okay.
And then it's sort of, if we add the two numbers together, we more or less sort of and keep going. That's how that's what Fibonacci is, and that's what we've got to. The third World Cup was 900. The fourth World Cup, add the second and the third together, 1400. The fifth World Cup, add the third and fourth together, you get to 2400. So I can safely predict that the sixth World Cup will have 3,800 participants.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah, that's really
you heard
quite a
it here,
lot,
folks.
isn't it? I mean, I thought 2004 was insane, but it
Well,
does
it
seem. I
is
mean, I've looked on the
insane.
site, and there are that many names. It seems I didn't count them all, but someone did count them all, didn't they, Mike? You've done a
They
lot
did.
of counting of them all. My goodness, you insaniac! And we do have other Mike joys to look at in a minute, so I just want to have another look at some teams because we haven't looked at the pun ones, and there's particularly some things that depressed me that I want to have a quick look at and share with the world. So before we come on to the actual races and the numbers and some of the insane things that Mike has done for us all, let's just have a little quick look back at some of these lovely team names. So after the Latishi Noobs and Just Dice It, we get Pilius, Bourbonicos,
Pilu, you'll
Pilu,
hear that shouted
sorry.
a lot. So,
LGBT plus.
One thing you'll experience at the World Cup is lots of shouting.
Yes.
And one of the things you will hear shouted is Pilu.
Okay. Does it
It
mean
is the
something,
fact.
or is it just a name?
Pilu is the club title. They are Le Pilu. One of them when when they score a touchdown, will shout Pilou, and the rest of them will go Pilou surface, which I translates, I believe, as Pilou in your face.
Okay, so they're polite and lovely people.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
Horrific?
actually quite aggressive.
Yeah.
It's absolutely charming.
Good.
And the chap that I remembered who was the most vocal with this is Matt LeFou, who is an absolutely charming Frenchman. So yeah, I'm not sure if he's going this time, but
I don't think he is. I mean, I have met LeFou and I didn't spot his name. And it doesn't seem to be on that list, so no, I guess he isn't. But we can expect loud noises from Pilou then.
Matt LeFou is a teacher, and if anything, the one job that's probably missing from this World Cup is teachers, because of when it is.
Absolutely, yes. Certainly, most of the people I normally go to tournaments with turn out to be teachers, and none of them are coming for that exact reason. It's in the first week of term for most of them. So I'm going with some interestingly different people for me, which is going to be fun.
You're a teacher, aren't you, Mike?
I was till 6 years ago. I got to 2015 by getting a special letter from the organisers asking the head teacher very nicely for permission to miss a day.
Yeah, so I think some of my friends could have done that, but they chose not to. So yeah, it's really difficult. When can you hold a World Cup where lots of people are going to be able to go? Because certainly if it was Alicante and it was a month earlier, then the teachers would be free. But trying to get to Alicante in the middle of August, let alone to find accommodation and a venue when everyone's there on holiday, would seem incredibly difficult. So I think this is, despite all the teachers missing out, probably the compromise that had to be made. Let's have a quick look at the rest of these teams, because then I do want to move on to the races that are coming, because I think that's going to be more interesting to most people. But whilst we're on this page, let's just have a quick look down. We have LGBT Plus from France, which is fabulous to see that. Hopefully they're not doing that ironically. That's a positive thing. Too Old to Die Young, which is the top Danish team, the top of the Scandinavians. Of course, Scandinavia all one country, but they do insist on dividing it up into differently named regions. Your Worst Nightmare, which is the first of our true pun teams, I think, coming in from Germany, with a couple of names there you'll have heard of, from Verminado, Aventa, Miko, Doc Max, Arioso, and Gaunab. The Spartak Noobs coming in from France, with Sebco and a few others there. And the first ringer, we get a Swiss Magic Moon, so outside of all the President's Men. Then another English team, the Tackle Zone. Very, very strong team this. I had them a little higher than the stats do. I hadn't realised quite how bad J-Bone was at Blood Bowl, which is obviously dragging them down. But they've got D for Dan, J-Bone, Nippy Longscar, Wilsif, and Wolfian, and Andy Davo, who's still telling people he's Welsh, I notice, on the team from the Tackle Zone. I think that's very, very strong. Then we get some Polish people in, Vijak Bajowi, Walek Bajowi. The Swedish Blood Bowl Alliance, which is interesting. I haven't heard of any of those apart from Oberwald, but I'm sure they're very, very good. The Jock and the Geordies, we have the Pipey and the Geordies in there with Don Vito, stick with the poo on the end, Tablet Walker, and they've brought Pedindas, down from Scotland to join in. And then we have more French, more Italians, more Spanish, more French, more Portuguese, which I'd undervalued in terms of the number of people turning up. And then the first of the Squad Chaos, who are taking 10. Yes, 10 teams are going from Squad Chaos to the World Cup. That is 60 coaches going under the Squad Chaos label. I will also be wearing my Squad Chaos shirt for the no doubt photo of all 600 of those, 60 of those coaches in Squad Chaos. So they've recruited far and wide. And as you notice here, it's a very eclectic bunch that have chosen the Squad Chaos banner. We have from Andorra, that noted Blood Bowl powerhouse. We have Sergeant and Store. From Denmark, Seabraw and Hargrim. From Germany, Ignace. And Volcajo claiming to be from Ladonia.
I think Andorra is a slight mock as well.
Yes, I mean, they're not Andorran, those two are German. And I know that as a fact. I also
was Andorran until about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yes, when he defected, having defected from Germany to Andorra, he defected from Andorra to Ladonia, which I've looked it up. It's not real. That's not a place.
That's interesting. I wonder how you can choose it in the database that I'm about. Yeah, I'll sort that one out.
Incredible. And just when I was getting quite cross about this idea, that clearly we've abandoned all concept of nation, I had a look at my team, which, just for people that care, we're in 56th place. So, yes, that's pretty much where I expect us to finish. I would love to finish above halfway. Top quarter, I would take that right now. Because, like I said, we're just going to have a laugh. But I was getting quite cross about this Ladonia thing until I realised one of my team is also from Ladonia. So there we are, betrayed by those you hold closest to you. So whereas I thought JB was from Austria, he is now declaring himself from Ladonia. I am disgusted, and words will be exchanged. But there's nothing I can do about it at this late stage. It's in the database. How important is nations, geggster? Does it matter for the World Cup? Do where these people from mean anything at all at a World Cup?
No.
Well, then why are we
No.
calling it a World Cup?
It's the biggest celebration of Blood Bowl that we've ever seen. Why? I don't understand. If we limited it to nations, then we wouldn't get any Uruguayans. We wouldn't get anyone from South Africa because we wouldn't have a team. Why not? Why worry about where people are from? Let's just get 6 people together to play Blood Bowl.
I absolutely agree. So I'm very much playing devil's avocado. But when you call it a World Cup, don't people expect at least some purity of team?
Well, maybe we'll call it PurpleChest Wonder Cup next time.
Now, I've been married a long time. I can sense passive aggression when I hear it. Clearly, you don't love the idea that I'm attacking it being a World Cup. Couldn't we call it the Blood Bowl Big Bash or something? The everyone welcome. Doesn't matter where you're from. A World Cup without nations.
Does it matter what we call it?
I'm going to be honest, there are more people attending this tournament than I knew played Blood Bowl.
Right.
So I'm going to say, yeah, World Cup's pretty fair. Just putting it out there.
I don't think it does matter what it's called, and I do think World Cup is probably the name that is the most attractive name to have for it. But it just seems to differ from any format of a World Cup in that it's people from all over the world, so I guess it's perhaps the real meaning of a World Cup. But
I guess we, right from the start, I think that maybe the first one, there weren't many, maybe every side had a nation attached to it. And I think maybe even the second World Cup, because it was oversubscribed. So this was in the Netherlands. There was only 500 people could go. And they did the organisers basically did the complex algorithm and said, look, from the amount of people playing worldwide, we're going to allow, I don't know, I can't remember the details, 4 Dutch sides, 4 Belgian sides, 6 French sides, whatever, carried on. So there was some form of national identity that was required as far as entry was concerned. But, I mean, that's long since gone. Myself, no, I played in the 3rd World Cup, or whichever World Cup it was, on a mixed team this time as well. Just we don't need to cling to national identity. So.
I completely agree, but we still have that hangover. You yourself described yourself as a ringer on a French team. So there's still some vestige of that national identity in this, isn't there? And I just think maybe it's time to get rid of it altogether.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Agreed. No objections here.
Teams aren't actually. They're not really flying under a flag. I've just taken the country from the NAF database.
Sure. Well, I think that's interesting.
Where it comes from.
It's interesting to know, and yes, we do know where a lot of those names and teams come from.
I would actually say in 2007. So there's AS won so a French side won, and in Games Workshop at Warhammer World in Nottingham, when the French won and they were announced as winning, I don't know, 40 or 50 Frenchmen there out of the 270 participants sang Les Marseillaises, and it was hairs on the back of your neck stuff.
Yeah.
So whilst I might laugh and say let's not worry about it, it's quite special when a country does win, like it is in the Euro Bowl and no doubt other international team events. when it truly is known as a country and we get an anthem. That's quite nice.
Yeah. I mean, I see no reason why we can't live in a world where we have the best of both. Where we sort of remove, as you have, nation as any kind of qualifying criteria or relevant in any way, but people will still naturally congregate into groups that are around all sorts of things, but nation and locality is obviously one. So we're always going to get, a team coming over from America with perhaps a token Canadian in there or whatever. You're still going to get those national identity teams, and I think that's probably a good idea. What does it mean for Euro Bowl, though, just to divert entirely onto that? Because isn't the Europa now getting sort of as big, if not bigger, than the Euro Bowl?
They're the same size, pretty much. But I think those two can coexist quite happily. You could call the World Cup the International Open or something like that, which would describe it more effectively. But again, it doesn't actually matter very much. But yeah, the Euro Open and Euro Bowl, those can be as big as the venue can take, basically. Euro, they're both about 250, I think, at the last count. But if Greece have a venue that holds 800, then I expect it can expand to that.
Now, your wonderful tableau doesn't just tell us what teams are going to win it, although it absolutely does do that. I think we can all agree there. I'm just trying to make
If
it.
it's off by even a hair, I'll be furious.
There we go. Oh, plus and minus just does work, doesn't it? It gets bigger and smaller. I'm learning things. This is good. So we also get some other lovely data here, which you've come up with fairly recently. One of which I thought was absolutely fascinating, which is you had a look at a couple of games played by other teams using this rule set, didn't you, Mike?
Yeah, it was good. So I did a trawl of the NAF database, looked for the words World or WC in the tournament description. That gave me a first pass, and then I crowdsourced which other tournaments have used World Cup rules. Got another list, and obviously a huge amount. I think the rule set has been out since about October 22, maybe slightly earlier. So obviously we've had a load of tournaments that have used the World Cup rules. So we ended up with about 16,000 games that have used the World Cup rules, which give you a reasonable data set for how well each of the races are doing and also how popular they are.
Yes. So with that, we've come up with some very lovely sort of visible graphs of things. I'm just trying to find the one we want to show here. I've got success versus number of games. But where's just the number of games? I've got a race grid, but I haven't got the pretty picture.
Which pretty picture you're after?
The one that is just success and a number of games played.
Yeah, success v number should just be a...
there we are. Yes, I think it's this one, isn't it? Let's cut over to that and stop picturing me looking so stupid. So that is a wonderful set of data. I don't know if you can see this one, Paul and Sol. If you're not on the stream,
Yeah.
I will. I'd recommend you pull it up open or try and pull the stream open. But we've got the most number of games being played down here at the bottom of the axis. Let's just check I am visible. Yes. Down at that bottom of the axis, we've got just huge amounts. 1,300 games played by both Skaven and Dark Elf teams. Skaven coming up with a 51% win rate, and Dark Elves under the World Cup rule set coming up with a 56% win rate. Those are definitely the two most played, and both come out with some nice chunky successes. Of course, outstripped, not surprisingly, by Underworld, coming in with a 58 average win percentage, a little lower than they're averaging perhaps in some other formats. I've seen them well over 60 in many others, but with nearly 900 games played. But absolute top of the pile for win rates might surprise some people. Have you had a chance to have a look at this data, Paul?
I can't pull it up.
Okay. Top of the win rates, it's Wood Elves with 59%.
I have to agree with Demi G here. I think that Underworld are severely under-tiered. I don't understand how they could possibly reach the T2. I mean, I understand that they can be star player reliant, right? And let's be honest, the skill package targets stars pretty harshly, but I was flabbergasted when I saw that Underworld was sitting in Tier 2. I mean, people are shocked enough about Skaven in Tier 2, much less Underworld. So, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I thought that the World Cup rule set was pretty well balanced, but the ones I picked out as maybe getting a little benefit from it mostly seem to be up at the top of those win percentages. I did think that Tomb Kings would be doing well, and sure enough, that's shown in that data. I thought Skaven in Tier 2 and Underworld in Tier 2 were both quite dangerously low. So,
Humans in T1 was odd to me. Snotlings as low as they were. I think they should be up a notch. Little things like that, right?
yeah, I mean, humans are just nowhere in this rule set, aren't they? Have we got any good news for humans going to the World Cup, Mike?
Hopes
There's
and
not many of
dreams.
them.
Okay, that's the good news.
So, if you want to be top human, then you've got a reasonable chance.
Right,
They
so
just so much struggle versus a couple of the big teams as well, irrelevant to which tier they're in.
Yeah.
They could be in tier 2 and they're still not going to like playing against lizards and dwarves and undead. So tier 1 are ridiculous.
But taking it just on the top win percentages, this is what we should be taking to the World Cup then, isn't it? We should be taking, if we look at this, there should obviously be a Dark Elf team on your squad, an Underworld team, a Wood Elf team, a Tomb Kings team, a Chaos Renegade team, and then it's dealer's choice between Skaven, Lizardmen, Dwarf, Amazon, Chaos Dwarf, High Elf, and Old World Alliance. Now, I expected Old World Alliance and High Elf to be slightly higher than they are. And can anyone explain to me why Chaos Renegades might be doing well?
What was the sample
What's this?
size?
Yeah,
Yes,
what you normally see.
I think we were on the same page there.
Chaos Renegades have 430 games played. So it's not insignificant. The total number of games sampled for this data set, I believe, is 16,000.
What that
So
isn't being
it's quite a lot.
what that isn't accounted for is how you might get a couple of very, very good Chaos Renegade coaches distorting the numbers. Now, anyone that might have taken them 50 times because they are smashing it through NAF events, through Fumble events, through tabletop. A super good Chaos Renegade coach, I think, might pollute the data.
Well, as an example, I think Peter D's probably played half of those games.
He's a very good coach, so yes, that would make sense. But it's
Also,
something.
I think
tier 4, though.
I also think it's worth mentioning that there is a margin of error that's reasonably sizable under, say, 1,000+ games. So even though what we have here is, a nice percentage, could drop down a couple points and still be well within that margin of error inside 400 games.
Yeah, we're not talking 25 games. We're talking 450
No, we're not.
games. I think that's chunky. It may not be definitive, but it's enough that you might think there's something in that data.
It has weight. It certainly has weight.
Okay.
I think the organisers, I've been high up in NAF throughout all of the World Cups, essentially. And what's been consistent amongst the NAF, the organising team, is they've got to worry about getting people, getting a venue, getting food, getting tickets, backup plans to backup plans. They have got so many things to worry about. They probably spend a fraction of the time on the rules. And we've all had a massive reset of the rules, of course, in the last few years. So it might well be that the Spanish organisers, I don't know too much about their team because they actually haven't needed much of NAF help. But if they had spent, they might have considered, look, let's put a star player tax. That will fix the Underworld problem. And we didn't have the data at the time to correct it. I use Underworld in this rule set with no star players, and they're incredibly strong. Obviously, so just because there's a
You
star
said
player
that without a hint of shame.
They're I've played them a couple of times. They're very strong, and if they'd been put in tier 1 because they thought the star player tax would nerf them enough, well, it hasn't.
I mean, I have to say that the fact they've got them under 60%, I think, is a step in the right direction. So it shows that tournament organisers are taking them a little more seriously than they have been in the past. But yeah, I mean, I think for a long time it's not necessarily down to tournament organisers to sort Underworld out. I think they're too much of an outlier for just TOs to be expected to rein that in. I think it's down to Games Workshop. I think we need to take Snotlings off them. I think it's the only answer. They don't need Snotlings. They'd be fine without. But it's...
Well, you have to also remember that Underworld aren't supposed to be tier 1. I don't care whether Snotlings are tier 1, Halflings are tier 1, whatever the tiers But GW do care. They've got an agenda. They go, look, Snotlings are meant to be terrible, of course. You know, your dwarves, your humans, your orcs are meant to be strong. That's what they like as their brand. So Underworld fit into that category where they're not supposed to be super strong. They're meant to be a bit of a joke team. So they do need to be nerfed a little bit. Removing Stotlings would probably do it, I'd have thought.
I mean, they'd still have. They're so cheap they can still fit the bribes in and the odd star player and things. I still think they'd have plenty of options. I just think
I agree.
Snotlings takes
Spinning
them. To me, that's what takes them
the
over the top.
Snotlings would be my idea.
Certainly, is what I would play with first and see how that changed them. What we'd end up with that way.
Look, all I'm asking at the end of the day is just that, close your ears, Tibham, that we nerf goblins one more time. I think the goblins really, have it coming. And if we could just tier 1 the goblins, just really take it out on them, you know? Baseball bat straight to the kneecaps.
They don't necessarily remove the Snotlings, just remove swarming from the Snotlings. That would
Now, I did, as someone has pointed out, I did actually win a prize yesterday, which was very nice, and I went up to collect it, and there was some painting stuff, which obviously would be wasted on me, or there was some wood elves. And I'm never going to build them whatever I take, because obviously I don't do painting or building. So I picked the goblins, because no one else wants them. No one wants goblins. And goblins still need love. You know, goblins matter, and they matter to me. Mike, they don't matter to the World Cup, though, do they? No one's taking goblins, are they?
No, absolutely not. No one took them to the warm-up games, and no one's taking them to the actual World Cup.
Yeah, we've got one more little interesting piece of data here. I mean, if you haven't been on Sans Tableau, then do go and have a look at it yourself. There's stuff here there's no way I can cover in depth on a show like this. But I do just want to throw this one up, which is how much people have played versus what's actually being taken to the World Cup. And that's the first way of showing it, is with 2 direct graphs contrasting each other. And what, if you can see them well, you will notice there is there's one huge outlier, which is Dark Elves, who are being taken to the World Cup by nearly 10% of people going, but have only been played in 7.5% of the games using the World Cup rule set.
There's 209 Dark Elf.
Yeah.
209. That would be one of the biggest tournaments that have played, just the Dark Elf teams.
810.
Yeah, 200.
810.
It's a lot of Dark Elves, isn't it? We're going to be knee deep in Dark Elves. I think if I was telling you what to expect at the World Cup, if that's really what this was about, the first thing I'd say is to be facing a Dark Elf team.
Yeah.
Because if it's nearly 10% and you're going to play 9 games, the odds are one of those games is going to be against Dark Elves. So
yeah, that's one of the interesting thing about squad tournaments, I think, is that you'll get a Dark Elf team on most of the squads, and if they're doing well, you could face the same ones over and over again. Like table 1 on a squad could be, if Dark Elves are as strong, but there's 3 or 4 strong ones there, but you're not going to see a huge variation of races over the weekend, are you? In terms of what to expect, then if you're in one of the top teams, you won't get a huge variation in the races you face.
Well, sure, and if you're in the top half of a strong team, chances are 1 in 3 games will be Dark Elves, 1 in 3 will be Underworld,
yeah,
and then 1 in 3, I know, Skaven maybe.
Because those races are going to be on every team. And they're going to have those success rates, so they like to be at the top end of the teams. So you're going to see a lot of Skaven facing Dark Elves and Dark Elves facing Underworlds. Great, I've got no idea how to beat Underworld.
I'm so looking forward to the World Cup. I am also looking forward to post-World Cup, because this rule set will go in the bin, and everyone will start again with putting Underworld down a little bit, putting humans down a little bit for tiers, and then we'll actually get some variation of tournaments. I know Sol says in the US he has nothing but variant tournaments to go to, but in Europe it'd be nice to have some new ones.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that.
I mean, I'm starting to hear it too. People bored of World Cup practice tournaments, But I mean, isn't it why it's really important the World Cup rule set is good and tight and reasonably balanced? Is because you're going to get at least a year's worth of everyone playing it. And secondly, as you said, it's going to teach us where we are with the meta and what actually needs to change. From what was thought balanced a year ago when this was made, we can now see actually Underworld do need a little bit more of a leveler. And
Agreed.
Goblins, no one should be playing, and it just makes me so sad. Why do people hate Goblins, Mike? Geggster, why do you hate Goblins? You're a competitive tabletopper. How can you justify to me the pogrom of Goblins?
I love goblins. I take them. I use them. I haven't used them for a bit, but I love.
So
playing.
it's you abandoning Goblins that's nerfed
Yeah,
their...
must be it. Yeah. It just they are one of those teams. Well, I'm not teaching how to suck eggs. They've just got no. They've got a poor plan A. Yeah, and then they have to rely on plan B.
Which is much
that,
worse.
Which is rubbish, even worse.
Can I just say
Yeah.
that I, for one, adore the goblins were already there, and then we made them suck more eggs. I love that we got there with them. It's phenomenal.
And in the latest FAQ, they got so much worse.
Oh, I
They
love
did,
it.
but that
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
a goblin nerf, was it? The concept, the bomber is a huge problem.
Yeah.
The bomber needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, right?
Sorry?
This is from a game balancing mechanism. From a perspective of game design, this is an oversight because it's not bombers that need to be fixed. It's 2-star players that need to be fixed. It's Cindy Pie Whistle and it's Bomber Dribble Snot. They're a menace, but that doesn't mean that you need to fix, Snotling Flingus.
I don't know.
Mean that you need to fix Goblin Bombers.
I faced a regular Goblin Bomber they'd just given accurate to, and he still throws it 6 squares on a 3 out of 4, which is still quite frightening. A 4+ with a built-in reroll, when it still had Mighty Blow and hit people on the ground and things, was still terrifying.
But you can't look at a piece in a vacuum, right?
No.
Because that Goblin Bomber is still attached to Goblins.
Yes, that's a fair point.
And Cindy Pie Whistle and Bomber Dribble Snot are in Underworld, in Skaven, and so on and so forth.
Cindy plays for dwarves.
Yes.
Yeah,
But this
you're right,
is
Sol. You're right.
This is an extension of Rift playing for dwarves.
Yeah. Yes,
You're right,
I mean,
Sol. Those 2-star players just absolutely are terribly cheap, terribly damaging. Fixing those star players in some manner was absolutely necessary. I guess GW wanted to fix it by making the turnover mechanic more difficult. More obvious. And they did the same with Chainsaw. Of course, the problem is that's bummed goblins twice, hasn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Who still have trained trolls that are 3+ when trees have no loner at all. I mean, how much do they hate goblins? How much? And that's after they killed our Doom Diver. Our Doom Diver is now useless.
I was just hoping that when the pogo moves, it's a turnover. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. You're coaching goblins, therefore 3 of your players are sent off on kickoff. That's clearly coming in the next errata. Now,
as the tour play #1 goblin team in the world, check it. It's real facts. I can assure you this is the best goblins have ever been.
Yeah, it's just not. Now, we shouldn't just talk about goblins because most other people just don't care. Unfortunately, I showed that by the lowest watched episode on YouTube of One World One Blood Bowl ever was the Goblin episode. I would do it again tomorrow. It was still important that we talk about goblins, and I don't care if you all don't want to watch it. It's fine. You don't have to. I still wanted to do it, and I did. But no one cares about goblins. So let's have a little look at the rest of that data and see what else is going on. Wood elves. How are wood elves winning? Everyone told me they've been ruined. I've seen wood elves crying. Coaches literally crying because their poor little sprinters lost 1 point of movement. And because leaping isn't an automatic success anymore. And I've heard absolutely no one caring at the sad wood elf coaches because they deserve misery. But now they're back at the top. What's going on there? Explain,
Those
Paul.
are tiny issues. The meta has changed to create far more fouling, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Far more fouling, and a wood elf team absolutely still should do well, but I think they've been taken off a couple of points because of how much if you foul a lot more, then a Bear 11's going to possibly be suffering a bit more.
And yet, in this, as in the 16,000 games we've looked at for the data that Mike's given us, they're top of the win rates again. Is that, do you think, because despite the growth in the fouling meta for this World Cup rule set, it's not that foul supporting? So perhaps the Woodies are doing better again. Is that maybe why, or
Yeah, well, they've the sneaky git and bribe has been separated, hasn't it, in
yeah,
the rule set?
one or other?
So whilst people are crying about Wood Elves getting spammed in a regular environment, but in the World Cup rules, they're not so damaged by it.
So we can expect Wood Elves to be back at the top of the tree again, joined by Dark Elves, joined by Underworld, and then High Elves. So the Elves are doing really, really well, aren't they? That's 3 of the 4 that are right up in the win rates. And yet I keep hearing this is the non-passing rule set, the non-elf rule set. What's going on
8
there,
out of
Mike? You're
110, baby.
yeah, you're the man for stats. Why are they doing so well, do you think? And is it the rule
Well,
set? Is it the meta?
it's partly that they're not. Well, there's fewer of them. There's only half as many as Dark Elves, so you're still getting people who want to do well with them and know what they're doing will take them maybe still, and so they're sort of still doing well with them. Whereas others may have dropped off if they're not as point and click as they used to be potentially.
They're not a sexy choice, are they, High Elves?
No.
So
Well,
they're
Wood
probably
Elves as well.
drawn to the better players.
High Elves is very much in the variance. High Elves are down at a really small number of games, only 200 games.
Okay.
So I wouldn't read too much into that. But the Wood Elf win rate is surprising, and it'll be good to see if that's supported at the World Cup itself. No reason to think not. But what I'd really like is to see how many of the top teams have got a Wood Elf on their roster. I hope to have that available for here. But as Paul was making the excellent point, the organising team have got more pressing things on their hands than providing me with data. So
I know. It's like they don't want me to have good content. They're so selfish. They're going to run this World Cup and not ensure that my podcast has nice things to talk about. I think it's very toxic. But I'll go anyway because I'm a nice guy. Some of the other teams that I've noticed were doing well there, I just want to have another quick flick back to it. As I said, we do have Chaos Renegades doing well. We've talked about why that may be. Tomb Kings, I'm not sure anyone's that surprised they've got a good win rate. They had a nice tiering in this. Dwarf and Chorf rocking a sort of okay win rate as they tend to, a little over 50%, nothing exceptional. Lizardmen doing all right. But Necro only just under the 50%, and Old World Alliance only just over. Now, I thought Old World Alliance had a really, really nice set of tiering here. So I'm really surprised to see them not quite up there with the ones really making the noise. Anyone else shocked by that? Anyone thought they should be higher up?
No, if anything, I'm suspicious about their win rate in the first place. I mean, on paper they're rubbish. So, I know they can do work, and I know their tiering can sometimes work in their favor, and with various star play setups, fine, great. But
Yeah, you see a lot of star caddying Old World Alliance races, don't
but yeah,
monsters,
no,
don't you?
it doesn't. Honestly, that kind of aligns with what I would expect. So,
Yeah,
what you might see,
I've
one
got
of the
them lower
quirks
than
of
that, quite
squads.
frankly.
One of the quirks of squads is that I would imagine none of the top 50 placing squads will have an Old World Alliance team, and so you might end up with actual Old World Alliance ending up with quite a decent win rate, because if those Old World Alliance teams are on squads who are not doing very well, you can quite easily get one person down the bottom who goes like 702 or something like that, but because their squad has tanked, they're getting slightly easier games.
see,
Which
that's
is
a perfect analysis by Girthquake there, because at the end of the day, like, context matters with numbers. You have to have a statistical reference, and so when you have a bunch of teams fighting lower end competition, of course their win rate's going to go up, and of course you can look at that and say like, oh look, this team's winning this much, but
So
it'll be relevant.
submarining with Old World Alliance, find five
Yes.
absolutely idiotic friends,
yeah.
put them on Chaos Chosen and Nurgle, take Old World Alliance and give yourself an 8-0-1 World Cup. That seems to be what we're recommending.
Most of my teammates are on the stream, so that's absolutely not what I'm recommending.
Paul, are you
Do you
prepared
think,
to reveal the makeup of your six?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yes.
So I was, yeah, sure. Anecdotally, as I've been to all the World Cups, you recall that the majority of people that have won the individual have typically been a good player on a rubbish team, who's
Yeah,
Yeah.
on
makes sense, right?
on one occasion, probably deliberately aiming for that. But anyway,
Is Pete W
the
going this year? No, he's a teaching thing, isn't he?
you our team, we've got a dark elf coach. We have dark elves, we have Skaven, we have underworld, we have tomb kings, we have undead and amazons.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Everything over 50% in the win rates, everything high quality, high class killer teams. Nothing there that surprises me. Skaven, why aren't they doing better though? I thought they had a real fillip in this rule set. I invited Sol on specifically to talk to me about Skaven and one turning and how they're going to dominate the World Cup. And they're not doing it. They're getting the number of games played, but they're only getting a just over 50% win rate. So why is that happening? And should I still be frightened of Skaven's one turning me all bloody World Cup?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. So, long
Okay.
story short, when it comes down to it, Skaven are a phenomenal race. They are great at a lot of things. One of their best assets is positional, and they punish poor positioning well. But they do have significant and sincere flaws through the line rats and through their fragility. So their defined weaknesses are efficiently defined weaknesses. And so what happens is when they run into top end competition with proper or perfect positioning, their life becomes a lot harder, exponentially harder. And so what you end up running into here, that's what happens. That's why the win rate flattens out. Is they stomp the lower end, they run into high end competition, and they get smashed right back. Never mind the fact, of course, that they're a high RNG race that's fairly dicey, and there's a lot of variability involved as well, right? Like a bad snake on a pickup, and suddenly the whole thing just kind of falls apart. Um, so yeah, that's probably why you're seeing a lower win rate with Skaven, is because they are a good team with a higher variability that get beaten by strong positioning, very strong positioning. Anything less than that, they stomp.
Are they also, in your opinion, requiring a high level of play to get the best out of them? If someone fairly
So,
new comes to Skaven, are they going to really struggle?
so I mean, Skaven are notorious for skipping the elements of Blood Bowl that are plain Blood Bowl. I mean, they can lay down an entire drive and then go for a one turn if they need to.
Click
But
rat, click end zone.
right. But I mean, even those elements still have like certain requirements, and I would say that there is a skill factor in the same sense that there's a reason we don't recommend them as a starting team to learn. That's why we pointed dark elves to orcs to humans. Um, there are a bunch of traps that you can fall into through rats, cutting corners and things like that. Um, and over relying on your movement to correct for your positioning instead of actually just positioning correctly in the first place, of which many coaches, myself included, are guilty of from time to time, right? So, do I think it's a great noob-friendly race? I think it'll get you through a lot of things, and I think you can roll dice with it, but I don't necessarily recommend it to the newer players, not as like an opening.
Also, you don't want the competition, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, God, no. Skaven, I don't want to play that. It's
Um,
disgusting, broken bullshit.
where do you
Anyhow,
stand on the rat ogre, or Roger, as I insist on calling him? Are you a Roger fan or a Roger Dodger?
I've had mixed feelings over the Jesus Christ. Sorry, I'm a mixed fan. I love what it brings to the table. I think it's an important tool in the kit. Here's a fun fact. People like to say that Skaven like to be surgical, and therefore they need an array of technical tools that are precision oriented. Here's the thing. I've been in an operating room. I've partaken. Sledgehammers are one of the tools we use, and a rat ogre can be a very effective sledgehammer. And there is a place and a time in which it can both turn matchups on their head, can be a useful tool for tying down key players, can be an amazing cage break option, right? And with the new animal savagery, it brings more consistency to the table than the other big guys do. And so there's something going on with the rat ogre that I think is worth utilizing with rats. I think that it's a very good piece. Um, the problem remains in keeping it protected and safe. You have to baby it harder than the other pieces because its absolute favorite thing to do in the entire world is get hit once and leave the pitch forever. That's like the signature rat ogre move right now.
Yeah.
So if you can efficiently protect it and you can utilize it well, The only other thing you really wanted to do is have the kind of stock to kind of feed it. But what people kind of don't understand is the odds of removal from a rat ogre on a 2+, like taking down and removing your own line rat, 1 in 20. It's not the worst, not for consistency's sake, at least, not when you really need it, and it can be quite valid. So I lean pro rat ogre. I still think there's of course something to be said about in general TV efficiency surrounding non-roger builds, but especially in this rule set. I tried the best I could to make a non-roger build, and I've come up with a little bit of something, but I will say I think it favors the roger. Yeah,
And
I do.
if you're bringing a rogue, are you a Jugs on the rogue fan, or do you think it needs protection with block or something, or leave it, unskilled?
Totally optional. This is totally optional and a basis of player comfort. You do gain added protection and consistency through block, but Juggernaut also improves your 1 turns, which is a nice, important addition. Not that you love relying on the Roger for them, but again, you can guarantee the blitz, right? You can guarantee the blitz. So, as far as that's concerned, I would say, either or is fine. The question is really where do you want to place your double? So I strongly recommend the B package, 5 primary, 1 double. And honestly, you can use that double for block on the Roger, but I don't necessarily want to lean into him that hard. I prefer a wrestle strip gutter runner. I actually think that it's incredibly on point, incredibly useful. It's an answer to every hack flim and griff handily. You have a 91% sack after reroll anytime you red dice griff with strip.
Wow.
That's not shabby, right? And so I think that he responds well to some of those more frightening star player takes that you may bump into. And not most, that would be hyperbole, but many teams, lack meaningful sure hands because like either they're, skinks on lizards or underworld who are going to be, solid as well. And it just goes on and on. The list goes on and on for reasons why you should do that. I think it's amazing. Even on teams with a sure hands piece, who's to say it's going to be on that piece forever, right? If you force and pressure a hard enough play, you can take the ball and make it, force them to transfer it off. And so I prefer Wrestle Strip on a gutter with Rat Ogre build, 4 gutters. I skimp on the thrower, which is a bit of a shame because he does make the 2 turns and the 1 turns better. But unfortunately, with the 1.15 build, I'm sorry, with the 1.15 build, if you want to include a thrower, you're trading out a gutter.
Right.
And I think the gutters are too good. And honestly, in most cases, you do not need the thrower to complete the 1 turn. So, I would say that ultimately I go 4 gutters, 2 vermin, 1 rat ogre, 13 rats. I like a solid 3 rerolls. I know sometimes people like to skimp, but let's be honest, it's a dicey race. And plus, if everything goes wrong, you're going to need the 1 turn, right? So they really thrive on their cheap rerolls anyhow. And other than that, what I'm looking at is probably tackle on a storm vermin, guard on a storm vermin, juggernaut on the roger to make a degree of consistency and to ease the 1 turn. And then from there, block on a gutter, and then wrestle strip on another gutter. And
Terrifying.
Yeah, something along those lines.
And as you said, particularly terrifying for something like, for example, Dark Elves, who don't have any sure hands and don't have the speed to escape rats.
Yeah, and again, look, they might pick it up, they might take it, right? Valid. But again, there's nothing to say that you cannot force or create pressure for a handoff or a pass. And so it's always a piece that you can make use of. And I think it's one of the best things you can do on Skaven is to stack Wrestle Strip on a gutter. Then my next choice, if you're really against it, if you say like, no, that's not for me, or no, I just genuinely think there's going to be too much sure hands, or I don't need it, then Mighty Blow on your tackle piece. You're going to be running into a lot of elves out there, and you're going to want some strong removal and some strong options. So
now, Geggster, surely you're going to say that tackle pieces shouldn't be taken on NAF style. On any NAF style team, no tackle should ever be taken. Surely you don't need. Sorry, partly because you're Amazons, but also partly because don't we just position well and then we don't need tackle? Or people tell me wrestle and frenzy is fair enough.
No, I have tackle on nearly every build. Well, I haven't got tackle for my build. I've got Amazons. I've got wrestle instead. But I absolutely love a tackle piece. Particularly, I'll take tackle on a Skaven team. Yeah, for sure.
Good. So we are in agreement. How do we
I
stop them?
really like Sol's analysis there.
Yeah.
I wonder whether Mike can help though. With one thing I thought of was
Let's talk
why
to him.
they've reverted to near 50% win rate. Is once people get wind, they're in the wrong tier. They're getting very popular, and when they get very popular, they're picked not just by the good coaches, but they're picked by the massive swathe of poor and average coaches. That's going to bring the win rate down.
Perfect
I don't think
question.
anywhere
I
near
want to talk about this anyway. So let's ask Mike. What do you think? Is that what's hurting them?
What you would normally see is this normal distribution, to be all mathematical about it. You'd see a funnel. So when you get a small number of games played, you get small win rates and you get high win rates. And then as you go through, you revert to the mean, you get back to the 50%, and that's where Skaven have ended up. They've ended up sort of 52% with lots and lots of games. So that's not that surprising. So they are good, but you're seeing bad players and good players play with them, and you're seeing some lack of success and some success. So Skaven have just ended up pretty much where you'd expect them, and so it's the difference between Skaven at 52% with 1,300 games, but Dark Elves at 57% with 1,300 games. Dark Elves are the interesting one. Skaven have just sort of
We don't talk about Dark Elves. They're fine. So Skaven. We're obviously going to talk about Dark Elves in a minute. So I'm always interested. I want to slightly move this to the left for a minute. I'm always interested when people say this. It was a comment on Facebook earlier yesterday that I again queried. You get a lot of people saying, "Oh, but that's because all the new players are playing that." I've heard that about dwarves. I've heard it about orcs. I've heard it about humans. I'm now hearing it about Skaven. In my heart, every time I've gone, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And there's always a reason why they think people are doing that. But I've yet to see any statistical proof for this. So, Mike, you seem like your man that has statistical proof for this.
I haven't
Can you actually tell me you can prove in any way that new people are playing Skaven?
So what you could do, but I haven't done yet, is look at the number of NAF games that people have played with the various
I don't think that's ever been done, and it's always used.
I haven't done it.
People always bring it to cite to back up something they believe anyway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dwarves are OP. They're only getting a 50% because loads of new people play them. But you've decided that, having already decided what your outcome is, you've then looked for the proof. It isn't there, so you've made some up. And I in my heart, I agree. It sounds to me like lots of people are trying Skaven. They've heard me say, or other people say, not me, do you know what I mean? But someone that they listen to say that Skaven are, well priced in this rule set. They've given them a go, and some people have found that the skill cap on Skaven is higher than their current Blood Bowl ability, and they're not getting the results with them. So I think that's why they've dropped down to, only 52%, but I was expecting them up near the higher 50s. So I kind of agree with you. It's interesting. It's said a lot, but no one ever seems to be able to prove it.
I would say
I just think with the amount of games played, Dark Elves are very high. They're clearly in the wrong tier. Underworld clearly the wrong tier. Skaven, I think, are in the wrong tier as well.
Dark Elves would therefore need their own tier worse than everyone else's. They are in the worst possible tier.
They exist in a genuine borderline at times where one feels a little high sometimes, but not always. They just kind of sometimes feel. Sometimes they do, but maybe this is just my own self-bias. But at the end of the day, it's just in a strongly competitive environment. Yeah, sometimes they just feel underwhelming compared to say some of the elves, for example.
Yeah, every time I've seen Skaven in tier 1, I've thought, no one's taking them then.
But 2 feels too low.
But if you put them in 2, they always look really good.
It feels too low. So that's what I mean by I get it. I get it whenever they throw them in 1 or whenever they throw them in 2. They're in that weird between where they're just kind of not a very impressive T1 team, but they have some strong tools in the box. And then, they're kind of a really impressive T2 team if you were to try and rank them in a 5-tier system.
So perhaps they're a genuine tier 1.5. But I'm interested in Geggster. You said that Dark Elves were perhaps tiered too well then. Do we need to have a tier 0.5 just for Dark Elves? And maybe Underworld?
I thought to myself, call, they need to be tiered 0 or whatever, tier -1. because if there's 209 teams and nearly all, well, I can imagine the top 50 teams. There'll be 49 Dark Elf teams in that lot. They are incredibly strong in this rule set. So yes, they could probably do with being knocked down a skill. Probably the proof is in the numbers. They're just so popular.
I mean, I've taken them I just put a pin in and picked a race. What is it that's giving Dark Elves the edge? Why do people love them so? I mean, elves can't throw now. Surely they're much worse than they used to be. Actually, before we move on to Dark Elves, because that question hasn't interested anyone, I just want one more thing on Skaven before we move on then, Sol. How do I stop them? If I'm going to have to face Skaven, how do I stop them?
Outside of working on optimizing your positioning, the line rats are a genuine weakness. Forcing out line rat blocks and basically bullying out, strength bullying line rats can be really brutal. The removal game comes pretty easily. You take your hits. Your problem is going to come down to the fact that, and this is what people I think dislike the most, is like sometimes you're just going to bang on rats and they're there anyways. They stay anyways. And when you have 11 rats or rats start out bashing you in any way or capacity, it kind of slips out of your hands, and that's not entirely your fault either, right?
So despite the gutters being the ones that are winning the game and the vermin being the ones that are killing me, if
the line rats are the ones that are losing the game.
If I concentrate on the line rats, I'll get you down to few enough people that you're buggered anyway.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, eventually you start if you start forcing 3+ dodges, they're gonna start failing because that's the reason that Skaven are agi leaning but technically hybrid. When it comes down to it, like your 3+ dodges, they're death sentences sooner than later. So that's why they're not elves.
They're telling me I should base. So base up those clan rats, monster the clan rats when I can, and just try and outlast it until I can start picking on the gutter runners.
Which is lucky because unless you have tackle, then hitting the gutter runners is a bit of a fool's game. It's much more of a percentage to take down the line rats to start with, and then you can bully, and then you can get you 3 dice on the gutter runners after that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so that's Skaven. Dark Elves, we're on to those. So yes, they're getting played a lot, and they're justifying that. They've got a 58% win rate. Except on this little piece of data, I found this interesting. Any ideas why this is happening? In the comparison of who's going and who's being played, they're not being practiced, are they?
It's a minor difference, but yeah, they're one of the only ones that are being practiced less than the amount that are going to the World Cup.
Because you also gave us this lovely graph. I love this graph where you've put the data points of the total number of teams in the World Cup and the total amount they've been practiced. And it's a beautiful diagonal line with every single race on it, except Dark Elves, which are quite a way off to the side. Because they are going at nearly 10%, they're being practiced at only just over 7.5%. So are we saying that Dark Elves are not only really good and really suited to this rule set, but everyone's already sussed them and they don't need to practice? Is that really what we're saying about Dark Elves?
I don't know. Are they? I've hardly played any Dark Elves at all. Are they? Is there any nuance to them?
How dare you? Yes, there's loads.
It's a genuine question.
Yeah. Look. There's beautiful nuance inside of Dark Elves, like between Surf, Frenzy setups, right?
Thank you.
There's some nice complex plays. Sometimes they have to roll 2s, and that's really hard.
Hey, I had to roll a 3 yesterday.
He had to roll a 3.
I had to have a long glass of water afterwards, and I wasn't feeling well. I mean, I've put together a team to take to a roster to take to the World Cup, which I practiced yesterday, which comes with only 3 blitzers, but they're all blodge, 2 witches with wrestle, a leader runner, and only 5 Dark Elves. But that means I've got 4 re-rolls counting the leader, and an apothecary, and 11 elves, 2 of which have Rog, and 3 of which have blodge. I think, other than Underworld, who are obviously unbeatable with any race, I think I can put that up against just about anything and have some kind of shot.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredibly strong.
I mean, 4 re-rolls in this rule set is just dirty, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. And just on the record, I do genuinely mean it, though. They do have nuance. All teams have some degree of nuance, and I think Dark Elves there are some genuinely special setups and options with them. They have a really unique and interesting playbook. and I think that they're really cool just in general. So I think that they're worth practicing more. It's a shame to see that people are just maybe a little complacent with it.
Well, two people in chat have just said that that roster and Dark Elves in general are a nightmare to play against. And I think maybe I've had a moment of realization this evening. I've quoted on this show before someone who I would refuse to name, who said to me, well, said within my hearing that they used to love playing Wood Elves, but in the 2020 rules they've started playing Underworld, and they just don't quite understand why.
I have a
Yeah,
I
I
have
think we
somewhere
all did,
between
Sol.
50.
I think we all had a guess as to why, and maybe that realization has dawned on them since.
I have somewhere between 56 to 60% of a guess.
Yeah,
Give or
exactly.
take.
Maybe one of the reasons I've moved to
Yeah,
Dwarfs, from Dwarfs to
what
Dark
was
Elves so massively in tabletop, isn't just the advice of Paul, who broke my heart and made me see the light, but it's also that I enjoy playing a race that makes other people miserable. Perhaps that is the link I have to accept about my own Blood Bowling. Do you remember what you said to me, Paul? Do you remember why I'm not playing Dwarfs so much anymore and how it's all your fault?
no.
You said to me, you said, you're pretty good with Dwarves, Dave, but no matter how good you get with Dwarves, if you want to win tournaments, you're going to have to play Elves.
Don't remember saying that.
Do you stand by it?
Um, no, because lots of people win with dwarves. I do think that dwarves have a limitation in the fact that in a 6 game event, there'll be a failed pickup. There'll be some calamitous turn that, because of your lack of speed, you'll struggle to recover from. So they're a quintessential. You're a great player. They're the quintessential 4-1-1. They're the quintessential 4-1-1 in a good player's hands. But that doesn't win anything.
You see, that's what you've said. That you've basically just said, I don't agree with that, but yes, and I'm going to say it again in a slightly different way. Because I was finding I was getting a lot of 4-1-1s and finishing third, fourth, second in tournaments. And you
Well,
went, yeah,
then you prove my point.
you can be as good as you want with Dwarves, you're not going to win, Dave, you need to swap to Elves. So I did, and I've won some tournaments, so thank you for that.
Although what we in the stats again, what we saw in 2022, I guess, was that dwarves were winning a lot of tournaments, but that was pre Megastar nerf, so it was Griff dwarfs were often winning.
guess
So
what,
dwarves
Which
did double to the top.
which
Yeah.
I mean, I did once do the death roller thing with Sneaky Git because I felt I
Yeah.
should. As I played a lot of dwarves, people consider me, to know what I'm talking about there. So I thought I want to do that. But I've never been tempted by Griff dwarfs because that shouldn't be a thing.
And I guess what I'm taking away from this is just that it took barely anything to get PC to abandon all of his principles and ideals. So that was great.
Well, I mean, you are looking at my Blood Bowl crush. The sex man god of Blood Bowl that is Geggster. His word is law to me in Blood Bowl. So
That's very fair.
when that man said to me, I invited him on this show, said, look, I need an expert on Underworld, and I know you played them a bit. He went, Dave, I'm an expert on every race. So that's why he's here.
You're misquoting me left, right, and centre. I don't remember saying that either.
100%. I will go to my grave. You can literally chip that on my gravestone. Geggster said to him, he's an expert in every race.
Did I say it with a cheeky smile?
You say everything with a cheeky smile, though, so that's not fair.
Yeah, well.
And a twinkle. There was a twinkle in the eye.
You're too kind. You're too kind, David.
Well, you are the expert in every race. So tell me, we've talked about Dark Elves. How do we beat Dark Elves? I've got an idea. I know what I don't want to happen, so I'm not willing to say.
It's the same what Sol just explained how to beat Skaven. In my view, we focus. So when I'm taking on Dark Elves, I need to ping a couple of linemen. I need to hit them. I need to stop them. The easiest. Someone said there, no nuance. Okay, and then we laughed about it. Okay, you're not going to win against Dark Elves if they have 11 of them and they bank off and you're only hitting one a turn. So when it's your offense, you hit them and you wash over them, making it impossible for them, even if they don't remove one, making it impossible for them to dodge out and create a wall. Focus on hitting the linemen. If you're playing against 11 Dark Elves, you're gonna struggle, like against most teams. So you have to focus on the ones that you can remove first, and that's the Dark Elf lineman.
Yep. And particularly my build, where I've only got 11 elves. If you can remove a couple of elves that I can't get back, I'm probably screwed. I think I absolutely agree. I also think this weekend it became obvious to me that people just love hitting my blitzers. So I would just leave my blodge blitzers in the way to get hit, and people would hit them left, right, and centre. Without tackle, doesn't matter to me. Even with tackle, I've got AV8. It's one of my better pieces to get hit, and I've got 2 more if you kill one.
But you're not leaving your AV7 pieces to get hit, though, are you? You're
No.
not leaving your
Oh
witch elves
no, I'm not leaving the runner or the witch elves to get hit. And if you can get one of my witch elves off, I've got 2, so I'm not that bothered. If you get them both off, then I'm really shorn of a lot of options. Because probably
You've gone
got
double
other...
wrestle though.
I have gone double wrestle.
I quite like one block, one wrestle myself.
Everyone else does, and I don't. So there we are. I'm probably wrong, but I've found it's the same thing. I'm ludicrously non-careful with them, particularly now that I've got 4 rerolls to throw at doing things. So quite often I do end up losing one at some point in the game, and I still want the one I've got left to have wrestle. So if I want to block things, I'll use a blitzer. If I want to use a witch elf, I want it to have wrestle. I'm probably wrong because everyone else seems to go 1 and 1, but then I always find I've got the wrong one available to me in the wrong place. Just my choice. If you do get the witch elves off, then I'm screwed. All I've got is the wall up option. I really don't have many options to be aggressive with you without the witches. So I want 2 in case I lose one because I'm not careful with them. Because they're elves, so I quite enjoy it when they die, even if they're my elves. Because I still hate elves. This is my dichotomy. Because of what Paul made me into, I now coach something I actively despise. But it's
even though you're not going to win the tournament.
No, we're just going to have a laugh. But I'm still taking the thing along that is my most successful at the moment. I'm aware I'm a walking contradiction. Or indeed, I'm sitting. I'm not even walking, am I? Let's face it.
Do you
have a target for the weekend?
Yeah, to have a laugh.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I just want to have a really good time. You know, I've not got my wife and kids. It's the first time I've been abroad without a wife and kids for 18 years. I'm looking to just have some fun and enjoy being a nerd and be in a room with 2,400 people rolling dice at the same time and just see what that feels like as an experience in life. That's my goals, genuinely. And to finish in the top half. I've never been to a tournament and not wanted to finish in the top half. I don't think that's that toxic, is it? It's not a bad thing to aim for.
Of course,
hear the wails of the children that you beat crushed beneath your feet on the Blood Bowl mat. Absolutely, normal goals.
I've never lost to a child, Sol, and I don't plan to start anytime soon.
Dave, we're all.
There's no shame in it. Have you seen them play chess? They're damn wonderful.
That's why I don't play chess. Paul.
Dave, there's no shame in saying I'm here for the fun and still wanting to be competitive. I hear all the time from people saying, "Oh, I'm just here for the lols," and then of course they want to be competitive. They sort of decry being competitive and say that you can't be competitive and have fun at the same time. I'm not a massive drinker, but quite frankly, you look around the top tables at most of these big tournaments, it's full of people that have absolutely hammered. I've had a good time the night before, and combining being competitive and having a good time.
Well, the first time yesterday, as I said, I was playing Blood Bowl whilst actively throwing up. So I now feel I've joined in on that one aspect of the meta I've never really got before, which is the being so ill you feel like throwing up whilst playing competitive Blood Bowl. Obviously, I wouldn't be me if I wasn't a little bit competitive. So I will be trying hard to win every game, but as a team, we're not going out there. We agreed long before we all got together and decided what races that we're going, no expectation on each other. That's what we really mean by going for fun. No one's going to turn around and go, "Oh my goodness, you've lost 2 in a row. You know, pull yourself together." That's not going to happen. We're just going to be loving and supportive and have fun.
I would hope that 98% of people going are going to have fun and see their friends and enjoy themselves. Yeah. Because if you go expecting to be top 10, well, you're a lunatic.
Yes, I mean there's too much variance for that. I think we all do accept that. I mean, after all, Dimmy G, who's in the chat, has won some games of Blood Bowl and I think even won small tournaments. So anything can happen in Blood Bowl. He's actually beaten me 3 games out of 3. So that's why I do love ragging on Dimmy, is because he always then drops that stat. So Dark Elves, we're going to beat them by taking out their Line Elves and then if we can, removing the Witches and not worrying so much about the Blitzers because everyone does and taking them out actually isn't that important. What about Underworld? They're going to be all over the World Cup. And they ain't getting nerfed before that, so we can expect to see them with snotlings, possibly even a star. Is it the gutter, Sol? I mean, you're my Skaven man. If I can take the gutter out of an underworld team, have I nerfed
Yeah.
them? Have I broken them?
Yeah, vastly. I mean, okay, so barring the star player thing with potential hack flim combination, which again has much less strength than it used to, especially in this rule set. I mean, yeah, the one of the weaknesses that they have is that they have one of on all of their critical tools, right? So you've got the blitzer and you've got the thrower and you've got the gutter runner, but if they only have one, so if you take it out, they lose that element of their toolbox completely. Like with Skaven, though apparently they're not, doing as well overall, it is to be said that if you Kaz out a gutter early, they're still very much Skaven. If you Kaz out the gutter from Underworld, they run into a lot of problems. It's harder to maneuver that ball. That gutter runner being out is phenomenal for you. So, yeah.
Am I right, Paul? I mean, you admitted your toxicity in playing Underworld. Was it to
Well,
practice how
I've
to beat
used
them,
them.
or
Okay, well, yeah, sure. If your opponent is crap enough to give you a hit on the gutter runner, the only one you've got. But I mean, that's not going to happen, is it, against
Right.
anyone even remotely competent?
okay? So I can't expect to get hold of that. So what should I do? How do I beat Underworld? Because I genuinely have
depends.
no idea.
My first suggestion would be avoid them.
Okay.
Be lucky in the draw.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the
gonna play
first bit of
attrition.
advice to be don't.
Beat them. Well, the reason why they're so strong is they've got so many different ways of winning. So I don't think there's a single strategy to how to beat them. And there's so many different rosters as well, obviously with star players. But I would attempt to uneven up the numbers. It depends. If you've got 14, you're playing against 14, you're really you're going to have to struggle to get rid of maybe some snotlings to make some space on the pitch. You're playing against 12, you might have some different issues. It might be easier to obviously, well, certainly will be easier to level up the numbers. I think it very much depends on your how many you're facing to start with, but trying to get attrition would be my key solution.
And even though they seem the pointless ones, if you can get hold of the snotlings, at least they disappear, so you can start to get the numbers back towards even and maybe beyond at some point.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you hit a snotling, the chance of it going away is you hit it with block, you hit block and tackle. Wow, crikey, it's incredibly high. So they're so annoying, and that I would when I use them, I'd rather have 6 snotlings than 6 goblins. I know you wouldn't pick 6 goblins because you don't get that many on that roster with 6 snotlings. They're so incredibly strong with being able to dodge everywhere on 2s.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely flatten one as soon as I could see it.
And are you a fan of beer pigs now for the same reason? Their ability to just go anywhere?
I guess so. They're less obnoxious because there's only 2 of them.
I yesterday picked up from my lovely friend Hugo Darley. I don't know how well it comes out because I'm not going to move the camera, but he's done my little beer pigs for me. This one is obviously a very good boy, and I'm looking forward now to coaching Norse just because I want to put that on the field. The other one is more your traditional beer boar, which is okay. It's nice, got some little sausages, but how can you not want to play Blood Bowl with that? Little prancing little fella. Look at him, he's so proud to be playing Blood Bowl. So that's exciting, and I look forward to playing some Norse now.
You know what? We're at it.
Very nice. The issue that Sol said about how you beat Skaven.
Yeah.
You can't do it with the line rats on Underworld, because if you go right, I'm going to try and force the line rats into doing things. You can't base them, because as soon as you base them, you've got enough snotlings to swarm around you and hit you back.
Yeah.
And you lose momentum.
So they always they're not dodging off. They're actually seeing that as an opportunity for them to hit back at you, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also think it's worth noting this, and it's probably something I should have stated earlier too, as a part of the How to Beat Skaven. So one of the number one things in our playbook, and a thing that I think applies in the situation to Underworld as well, is that for some reason people love putting us on defense, and I get that we're frail, but God, do we love being put on defense? Put them on offense, make them hold an 8-turn offensive drive on the first part with their frail team, and break parts of them over and over again. And I know that they have higher numbers in Underworld. But at the end of the day, you know what? Like, Skaven are great at scoring in 2 turns, but it's not as easy to hold it out for a solid 8 when half of your team is gone by the end of the drive, right? And if you're on offense first, you have to, because you don't have clock control, you don't get to see the state of affairs to determine if you can do a quick 2-turn, go for an 8. So putting these teams on offense and then just grinding them down can also put you in a position where maybe they won't even get their numbers up for defense, and then that's when it comes into play for, like, mauling out the gutter, for example. I think I think as a whole, it's very understated that a lot of the newer players will lean into taking offense just because they want to hit or because their opponent is frail. But it's in this case, I think Underworld and Rats don't want to go on offense first. They love it when you put them on defense, so put them on offense and grind them out.
I mean, I would always try and put Rats on offense, because also on defense,
Yes.
they've got that option of lying down and then one turning on turn 8, when they're still going to have a full
Yep.
team to try and one turn with.
And
So
that's what
that
we
always
discussed with
worries me.
clock control, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then if, God forbid, they turn you over, right, then they know they can just 2-turn in the second half. So,
Something's cropped up in the chat that does worry me, so I just want to talk directly to James Paints, whose specific question was, not even joking, I'd probably stop playing tabletop if they nerfed Underworld. Just bitter undead, dark elf and dwarf coaches moaning they can't grind 2-1 every game. Yeah, suck it. That was my response. No, joking. James, I think what I'm talking about with nerfing Underworld is I don't really want to see any race with over 60%. I'm quite happy if Underworld are the most dominant race in the game. Something has to be. I don't want it to necessarily be Wood Elves constantly in every rule set. So I'm happy if Underworld are. But can they not be dominant with, say, 58, 59%, rather than 63? So that's what I'm looking for, is to nerf them back down to still maybe at the top, but not 5% above every other team's win rate.
every game I've ever run into, there's somebody at the top basically citing that if their absolute best team in the game, well, okay, maybe that's a little strong, but one of their best top-end teams in the game gets touched in any way, shape, or form, that's it. And it's just not fair. And it's like, I don't know. I spent a lot of my life gravitating towards things that weren't necessarily in that category. And so I have a lot of trouble empathizing with this idea that if the thing that you play can't be the absolute best thing, or if it's even just a slightly worse absolute best thing, that it's just no longer worth playing for you. I mean, and that's not me trying to be antagonistic, of course. We're allowed to have a difference of opinion on that, but I just don't have a ton of personal sympathy for it. Like, they should
Yeah.
be toned down just on a balanced perspective.
And you can
because
always
that's
you
the
can
way
always
things
find a
go.
new love. I mean, there are some people that loved Wood Elves that now find Underworld attractive to them. I mean, might
If the
find
only
a.
thing keeping somebody in a game is just the win rate, then you just play any game with a better win rate for you.
I mean,
But
I've heard some real purists say that everything should be between 45 and 55% win rate.
I'd like that if
I
it was possible.
I'm not that aggressive. I would like to see the majority
Sure.
of teams in that chunk. And then I don't mind a
I,
few outliers between 55 and 60, and even 40 to 45, like Black Hawks. It's kind of all right if they're 42, 43. There should be some
That's
tougher teams.
well, that's nirvana, isn't it, David? To have a win rate so balanced,
Yeah,
have picked it so that the teams that you want to be strong. So as far as the license is concerned, the wood elves, dwarves, humans, undead, then be the strongest. Goblins, halflings, snotlings, underworld. Underworld should supposedly one of the weaker races if you get actually win percentages. So if you could do it, 45 to 50, 55 to 45, that would be brilliant. But it's an impossible feat. Bear in mind, we've got dice involved.
yep.
We've got all these different coaches, different levels involved. And then we've got TV 100, TV 110, TV 120, TV 140. I mean, crikey, all the way through to TV 200. How on earth would you ever balance that?
You make me feel
Impossible.
stupid again for even asking. You wouldn't, but like I've said, I'm quite happy if we could land at. I don't know. You're going to tell me there's no such thing as NAF tier, because Purple Goo always does. But if it NAF tier, which is, as everyone knows, 1100 or maybe 1200, if everything was more or less between 45 and 55, with say 2 or 3 teams between 40 and 45, 2 or 3 teams 55 to 60, and even stunties maybe 35 to 40. What bothers me is Underwhelm over 20, over 60, and Goblins under 35. I think those two are too far away from the big chunk. The rest I'm more or less happy
Agreed.
with. So
Agreed.
I'm just looking at those real outliers personally. I just want those pulled in. And then I don't care if Underworld are top of the tree. Something's got to be top of the tree. I don't care what it is. I've got no attitude to it being Underworld. Really. If it's their turn at the top, it's their turn at the top.
Full points. Yeah. They're 5 full points above the next best.
Yeah.
And that is the whole the game is not truly balanced. Well, it'll never be truly balanced. I just made that point. But it needs to be better balanced if they're 5% above the next best in a 30-team environment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as is going off in the chat, when we're going to have a random number generator, we're always going to have some variance in that. There's always going to be teams that do better at it, certain builds that do better. We're never going to get 45 to 55, and I don't think it should really be the aim. But we can get a fair chunk of the teams in there. We've got, 29 teams at the moment? I'd like to see maybe 15 to 20 in that 55-45 band. And then, as I said, 2 or 3 higher, 2 or 3 lower, and maybe the stunties a tiny bit lower again. But I think 62 and 32 are numbers I don't really want to see in terms of balance. To me, that says there's a slight problem there. Now, we've looked at the big three. Any quick tips on the other ones before we do need to wrap up? We're getting hugely long with this one. I've really enjoyed it tonight, so thank you for this, guys.
Great. Thank you for having us.
I just want to have a look at some of the other teams we might see right up at the top. I seem to have killed it. Where's it gone? Is it back now? Yes, it is. Hurrah. That we might see back up at the top in lots of the top teams that might be coming to face us. So, there we are. We've talked about how we would beat Underworld, how we might beat Skaven, how we might face Dark Elf. Certainly in terms of both success rates and number of games being played and teams going. We can expect to see a lot of those three around. But Wood Elves are also on there. Anything new in how we beat Wood Elves from how we used to beat them, which is get hold of a War Dancer and leap on its face until it stops being a War Dancer. Do we just beat the War Dancers, or is it the same thing? Do we pick on the weaker elements?
Again, I think you pick on the weaker elements. You're not going to beat a good opponent with Wood Elves by hitting the War Dancers, because you're not going to get a chance to hit them, quite frankly, that many times. Sure, if you get one nearby and you've got Mighty Blow and you've got Tackle, then perhaps, but that isn't very likely. I'd focus on the linemen, try and chip away.
Okay. Anything from Mike or Sol on Wood Elves? What are we doing about those?
No, it would just be interesting, I think, to see whether they do come out of the woodwork, as it were, to see if they produce that win rate.
I don't know if it's more exciting to me or depressing that they're back and back at the top of a win rate, even if it's just this one thing.
They're meant to be the best, though, aren't they? They're meant to be the best. That's what Paul was saying about.
I wouldn't mind seeing them toned down too.
Yeah,
be fun.
I mean, I think they can spend some time in, say, the top 5 without being the number 1, can't they?
Yeah, well, I don't think a game against Wood Elves is boring, though. I think playing Dark Elves is much more boring than playing Wood Elves. Wood Elves do a lot more nonsense, don't they, than Dark Elves? Because
I've heard rumor that their armor breaks sometimes too, but I've never seen it in person.
Thank you, Sol. So far, the only one I feel who isn't dogging me for playing Dark Elves. So it's nice to have someone here that's.
Oh no, you're a sellout, man.
Okay, fuck you too then. I just.
No, yeah, you're the worst, but it's cool. No, it's great.
I am the worst. I think that's been proven many times.
Yeah, go back to Goblins. You used to be cool, man.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's interesting. Just to, I guess near the end, but no one's mentioned Lizardmen very much. Lizardmen are still popular and still have a high enough win rate as Skaven. They didn't particularly get nerfed. They got a slightly increased in cost, didn't they? But they're still going to be very good.
1,000 games, rocking a 51% win rate in the World Cup rule set. Surely there we're hitting the skinks, aren't we? Or we're not trying to take sources out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Dwarves. Nothing very much to change.
Dwarves, no one wants to talk about. We spent an entire episode pretending they were overpowered and no one bought it. Chaos Renegades, I don't understand that, but I did expect to see High Elves, Tomb Kings, and of course Amazons up there. So very briefly, anything on the Tomb Kings, the Amazons, that we need to be cognizant of when we're facing them? I mean, those are very different challenges, the ones we've talked about, Tomb Kings particularly, aren't they? If there's going to be a lot of Tomb Kings around, doesn't that require a whole different play style? We can't be basing them up and taking out the weak things, can we?
Goodness, no. Tomb Kings. Well, they're mistiered, so that's why they're so well seen so many times and so strong. I haven't played against Tomb Kings for quite some time actually, so part of that will be I've got my Amazons. I'm not looking forward to playing against Tomb Kings at all.
Is that because you're expecting them to have a tackle mighty blow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the stack, isn't it? I mean, it's been mentioned in the chat we've got the lovely Andy Davo in the chat. Nice to see him here. As we spotted earlier, whoring himself out to a team of miscreants from all over the world in order to try and win a World Cup. So that'll be nice to see how successful that is. It's the tackle mighty blow that your Amazons are fearing then.
Yeah.
I mean, good, because Amazons are going to be a nightmare as well, aren't they? So the thing with the Tomb Kings, do we isolate the stack? Do we give it things to hit that aren't what we're worried about? Do we just try and run away from it? They're not very fast.
Well, no, I think you just stand in their way. That's a quite straightforward solution. Stand in their way. Try and make sure, diagonal. You can't just, in my example, Amazons, I can't just dodge away because I'll fail to do that eventually. So I have to stand there and knock them back. I can't just retreat. But they are, they're stand in their way. Make them have to go around you or through you. If you do it properly, then they won't do either.
Because the Tomb Guardians aren't going to have a lot of block. They're either going to be stand firm or guard or possibly mighty blow, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a lot of stand.
There will be guard.
There will be guard.
Yeah.
Mr. Stats tells me there will be. They all take guard, do they?
So we've seen a couple of we've had a couple of roster analyses. The German Team Bowl played World Cup rules, and they gave us all their rosters, and Tomb Kings were guard.
Yeah.
Then.
It does go without saying that, roughly 1 in 4 times they just don't pick up the ball either. You can put some pressure in the backfield, make the play around that, and kind of center around their lower movement.
Well, when you say you can, you mean you can, because you've got to move 9 gutters.
Yeah, the one that I care about here. Yeah.
Poor old Paul's got to move 7 Amazon, and the rest are all move 6.
It's just one of those things where they're going to have stronger matchups versus slower, bashier teams because they're stronger and they're going to bully as a byproduct of that. And that's their natural enemy is going to be more agility based. So, yeah, it's going to be tougher. Obviously, like I can say, find your blocks where you can, but that's kind of a gimme, isn't it?
Because that's one of the things we really haven't had the time to look into is the individuals for each of these matchups. I mean, dwarves are very fascinating there in that they do incredibly badly against some of the teams that other teams do well against. So, sorry about that. I hadn't turned the ringer off. Or put the phone face down. So dwarves do very, very badly against people like Tomb Kings, against even Chaos Chosen, Orcs, all the other stronger teams, because there's so much strength in this rule set now that even with a lot of guard, they're really struggling to live up to those big, strong teams, smashing them back. But of course, do quite well against Skaven, against Dark Elves, against Wood Elves, against the more agile teams where they've got a chance to really put that tackle and that strength to use. Sorry, the armour to use. Take some hits and still be there afterwards, not give holes for them to run through, and get a few removed off the pitch at the same time. So dwarves are quite an interesting place in the meta. If you took them out, it would obviously be very different. We'd get a lot more success for some of these dodgy teams. It's nice to see Mike nodding, because I spent 2 hours with people shouting at me, not realising that. Dwarves.
I think dwarfs at the World Cup is interesting though, because someone was saying 4-1-1.
Yeah.
Dwarves are a 4-1-1, and that's great on a squad. It may not win you individual tournaments, but
and even if they're not, even a competent player on dwarves should be at least getting, say, in 9 games, I think 3-3-3 is very doable. There's a massive draws in dwarves are not difficult to get some draws. And you can easily see that in 9 games, at least a couple of them, you should be able to get on top with a few hits and get lucky in the numbers. And then a couple of them, the elves are going to go past you and there'll be nothing you can do. High elves as well are going to be there. How do we get rid of the high elves? I mean, there weren't that many of them, but they were having reasonable success.
I think you won't see them on the top squads.
Okay. Yes, as Andy Davis says, both high elves are going, and that may be true. So perhaps that isn't something to worry too much about. Now, we talked about the races, we talked about the teams, but we haven't talked in general about the World Cup. In just the last couple of minutes, just closing thoughts. what haven't we been talking about at the World Cup? Obviously, Sol, I might have to leave you out of this one, so we'll come back to you for perhaps a word on just why Blood Bowl 7 should be the major form of Blood Bowl in a minute. But
It shouldn't. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely not.
but it's what you're good at, mate.
Yeah, that's okay, but it's still not probably great Blood Bowl.
How dare you? It turns out I'm quite good at it too. What should I be thinking about at the World Cup that I haven't? Outside of the races and the teams, is it the smell? Is it just the physical tiredness of 3 days of Blood Bowl? I mean, I've actually noticed they've put loads of space in this one. We've got 45-minute gaps between, games in the afternoon, and we've got an hour and a half for lunch, or an hour 45 for lunch. So surely the schedule's going to be able to stick to that. Surely there's going to be time and space.
I would just highlight, as Paul did earlier, it's the massive logistical challenge that the organisers have let themselves in for. So if there was ever a time to be kind, then it's at a Blood Bowl World Cup. I don't know the organisers whether they've taken 6 months sabbatical from their jobs or anything, but if not, then they're doing it as volunteers, definitely. And everyone should go there and expect to have a lovely time. And if there's a couple of delays, embrace the Spanishness of the whole thing, the mañana approach.
I think that might be racist, but I do know exactly what you mean.
I would say that make the use of those gaps. A 45-minute or an hour gap between games normally would be, goodness, this is a pain in the ass. What you've got here is 2,400 Blood Bowl friends, 2,300 of which you've not met before. There are people from all manners of the world. You're going to have a great time. Just embrace it, and speak to some strangers, find some new people to talk to. There'll be plenty of downtime, and by the time you get to the third day, you'll also quite appreciate a bit of a gap between games, I would have thought. So make the most of just the festival of Blood Bowl that it's going to be.
Personally, I was planning between every game to find you and tell you all about how my game went in detail with all the dice rolls.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay. Have you learned how to say, and what was the weather like in Spanish yet?
Thank you. I'll try and learn that.
Okay, so that's what you are going to admit to, is it? That's a geggster quote that I've got right.
I have said that.
I've decided I need to be more brutal in life. I'm clearly too nice. And one of my great role models is the lovely Paul.
So David will often come up to me and give me some details about his games. And I've heard it. Unless you quad scold in the last turn to win the tournament, I don't really care. Now I'm just as bad as everyone else at doing it.
But you have a fantastic response to anyone telling you about their dice, don't you?
Yeah. What was the weather like?
Yeah. So I've now started asking people that, and mid-flow, as they're saying, and then I just needed a 3, and I went, oh, so what was the weather like? And the crestfallen look on their faces is one of such joy, as they both understand just how ironically I am slaughtering them, and how deeply I don't care about their dice story. And it's made me try desperately hard to stop telling mine as well. So thank you very much for that. You've brought a certain brutality and a certain freedom to my love of Blood Bowl. And it's one of the reasons I will love you forevermore.
On the flip side, there's going to be, 1,000 people at the tournament who have played fewer than 100 NAF games, fewer than that. Some will be their first tournament. I was if you look at some of those teams, some of them haven't got any NAF rankings. They haven't played any.
Yes, I didn't show that, but right down at the bottom of your predictions, let me see if I can cut back to them very, very briefly, just because it's super fun. Oh, I've completely lost it now. There we are, it's squads, isn't it? Yeah. So right down at the bottom of the 240 available squads that we have the data on, we have these beautiful people. Let me go in and make it bigger. You give it a rub, don't you? Control plus, you said. See, I've learned things. People said I couldn't get better at this, and it's not true.
We taught Grandpa how to use Facebook.
God, don't start me on Blood Bowl and its love of bloody Facebook, Sol. The number of times I'm trying to use that awful system and search up something I saw 2 days ago, it's gone. I'm never finding it again, am I? Can we all just agree and get over Facebook and move on to something else, like Telegram?
What do you want to go to?
Telegram, something more modern than Facebook.
Jesus.
Smoke signals. Write me a letter. Jesus,
We're just gonna
Facebook, I
force.
hate
We're
it.
just gonna force PC to pick up a TikTok.
So
Fine.
look, I'm on TikTok.
Are you? I cannot wait to see the
No,
dances.
I'm not. No, because
Dang
every
it.
time it advertises to me, it's showing me pictures of
Well,
16-year-old girls dancing
that's all right.
in
That's
leotards.
okay.
And I
Well,
think
for
if I
anyone out there that
download
needs
this,
it,
I'm going to end up on a
yeah.
list somewhere. You know, I've
Yeah,
got
that's
I've got an
fair.
18-year-old daughter. I see enough dancing.
Okay. Well, if anyone's interested, my OnlyFans can be found on my.
Right, so I am going to talk about this. Right down at the bottom of the teams, San says these are all the losers. So these are the ones that are going to go nowhere. We have Lahord de Acre, we have Chemectra, the Bearded Bruisers, La Barber. Oh no, sorry, so only the three. Bearded Bruisers, Chemecta, and Lahorda de Acre, all of which have brought entire teams, none of whom have played a single game of NAF Blood Bowl in their lives.
Jesus Christ.
What a wonderful thing to be drawn against in round one. A total unknown. Surely at least one of them is going to be a Blood Bowl prodigy and has played 1,000 games under a different name or something.
Or on online.
Yes, yeah, quite possibly. And then we get a team with only one player and he's got 133 as his NAF average.
It will be a festival. There'll be so many
Yeah.
people there, so many fun stories. What I have experienced in the last couple is they've been so big. Like 6 months later, you met someone and you go, well, you weren't at the World Cup. Oh, they were at the World Cup.
Yeah.
The event is so big. The curvature, some people will be hidden behind the curvature of the earth, the hall. It's that big an event. So there'll be plenty of people there you just never even bump into.
I mean, I was at the last UKTC at NAFC. I think the UKTC was much bigger, wasn't it? Somewhere like 360 people. And this is 8 times that size. I mean, it's amazing. I just can't wait. And I am going to make sure, and this is my top tip to everyone that's going, shower every morning, rigorously.
Please.
Really, really rigorously.
I
And
think the
again for
challenge is
dinner.
going to be with the shirts because you need 3 shirts if you're.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a Team Fumble one, I've got a Squad Chaos one, and of course I've got the One World, One Blood Bowl t-shirts. So I am
Yeah.
covered. I have a fresh one at least per day. And some days I might take 2. Just because you never know, spilling that paella. I'm not the tidiest eater. I might need a second shirt in the bag. What's your top tip? We need to say goodnight. This has been 2 hours of fun and laughter and shoehorning Sol into a show where he really didn't belong. It's been a pleasure having you here, mate. I've really enjoyed it, and it's lovely to have you on. All of you. What's your final thoughts on a World Cup in Alicante? Let's come first to the lovely geggster, who's put up with me all evening. What do you want to say to people without me taking the piss?
Have fun. Don't take it too seriously. Go there to enjoy Blood Bowl, enjoy Alicante, enjoy meeting up with old friends. Don't worry too much about the results. Blood Bowl.
Sol, is your advice in the chat what your advice is to the world?
Yeah, I think that the world would be a better place if we went shirtless and they realized that deodorant's actually a suggestion, guys. That's my biggest advice to you. Don't wear it. You don't need it. It's fine.
Humans are supposed to smell that way.
Yeah, it's natural. Natural.
And Mike.
Yeah, I would say do your best to make every game a good experience for you and your opponent. Just the dice will be bad to you at times, and try not to let it affect you.
I suppose I've got 2 great bits of advice. The first is if you're the person at the latest NAFC that shat themselves, then just make sure you've got your medicine with you this time if you're coming to the World Cup, please. That was very hard on all of us. I didn't mention it at the time. I think I know who it was, but yeah, just make sure that if that's you, bring your medication. The second one is I want to echo the have fun. I'm going there for fun. So obviously if you're playing me, try and make sure you lose. Other than that, though, come along, say hello, meet people, chat, enjoy the experience. I mean, I do kind of agree with Paul. Everyone that has ever talked to me about, I want to get more fun out of Blood Bowl, when you dig down into that, what they're often talking about is, I really would just like to win 5% more. But it's not all about the win. Sometimes it's about taking part, having an experience, and trying to be competitive, and then not really caring what the outcome is so much. It's the attitude you go with, not about the outcome. It's about the input.
I've got another tip.
Okay.
Try and find someone to swap a shirt with at the end.
Someone the same size.
Someone that's listened to my shower every morning. Advice, definitely. And not Sol, because obviously you'd be flaying him and taking his skin with
Yeah.
you.
Hey, it's pretty good skin. You can have it. My gift to you.
Right, I think it's probably time we wrapped up. This isn't one I can put into a neat box, except I've really enjoyed it. 3 lovely people. I hope you've enjoyed spending time with them too. Thank you very much. This was One World, One Blood Bowl 38. My
And also
daughter
others,
is
yeah.
hopefully, we find out in a few days, hopefully off to university, which means that my next few weeks are going to be spent trying to organise that. There isn't going to be another one before the World Cup. Hopefully One World, One Blood Bowl will return after that. We'll see. But for now, that's us. Thank you very much and good night. If everyone could wave, firstly, I find it really funny because it's just like how the Teletubbies ends. And secondly, it's an easy point to find in the edit. Thanks very much. That was us. Good night. Okay, they're all still here. I haven't raided them on anywhere yet, so I will do that. And then obviously we can talk about how awful chat was this evening.
Yeah, the worst.
Weren't they?
I
They
hate
just
all
gave
of
us
them.
nothing.
Oh my god,
Honestly,
just
it's like
the
they
worst.
just weren't even trying.
Yeah.
Oh, do you play on Fumble?
You know, this makes me a bad person. No. I want to, but God help me, I can't stand it visually. And I know that's such a complaint that you'd expect from, a newbie, but
You could do what
God help me.
the modern young generation of trendy streamer does, which is play with the ludicrous coloured circles with just a letter in them.
It would honestly probably be better for me than the alternative, yeah. Which I don't consider myself much of a graphic, so I mean, Fumble is such an important. Like, I love what it does. Like, Chris's work is fantastic, and Fumble is an important, critical, like, part of this community. So I'm so glad it's there. And in fact, what if I could have had my way, we would have taken every dollar away from Cyanide and just funneled it right into that guy, and had him develop Blood Bowl 3. So I have a lot of love for it. It just I'm also a baby and refuse to play it.
I think it's, if you wanted to develop, I think it's probably your only next step.
Yeah,
To play
well,
in something like the Super League against the best NAF players the world
All
has.
right, well, let it burn then. I'm gonna go over here and stagnate. It's fine.
Well, if you change your mind at any stage, Sol, there'll be a whole bunch of people on Fumble, I imagine, queuing up to play you. And as Dave says,
That'd be
it's
no,
a
that'd be
brilliant,
lovely.
it's
Yeah.
a brilliant league for those who embrace it. I've
All
been
my
in a few days.
cynicism aside, thank you.
I'm
It
sorry?
means a lot. All of my cynicism aside, thank you. That means a lot.
No, it's
Like,
genuinely.
Well, I'd be delighted to play you. I'd play you
Yeah.
now.
Okay, he's only saying
I'm
that
gonna
because
go get.
he thinks you're American and hence an easy mark, and he can get some points off you. That's
I am an easy mark, and he's partially right.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
no. Look, when I said I think Sol is the future, I do. Though I talked about all the quotes with you, Paul. What I didn't say on the show is something Sol reminded me I said to him, which it does sound like me, so I probably did. I think I was doing a commentary, and obviously when you're doing a commentary on a Twitch stream, you're trying to be entertaining. You're not necessarily just, like, you're not a football analyst. You're trying to entertain people and amuse people as well as say things that are true or interesting. And apparently Sol will tell you the exact quote. What did I describe you as? Yeah.
Shirtless wonder.
No. I mean, I'm just, I'm an all right enough guy. Just kind of a middling coach. It's fine.
So I did at the time describe him as a middling coach.
At the time I was, and at the time I still kind of am. I have things to improve on.
There we go.
That's the thing with me is, like, you'll never hear me too furious with the truth, and also for all of my brashness and cockiness, I also can kind of confront, like, reality and recognize, like, I do have lots of room to grow, and I do have lots of places that I need to go as a competitor and as a coach. So I never really took it with too much offense.
Yeah, but I agree with Andy in the chat. I would say the same now if asked. I think you've come on leaps and bounds since I said that. I think at the time I was probably being a little bit harsh anyway. I think we're probably just over middling then.
Okay. I'm a fairly unlikable guy. I don't blame you.
You're not. You're lovely. But yeah, I mean, I think people get to know you rather than instantly go, ooh. Unlike, you go onto Rick's stream and you're like, I found the nicest human in the world. I'm not sure you come over instantly like that.
I will always love that Rick exists in this community and people like Rick exist in this community, and I will always envy and desire to emulate them, and I will
Yeah.
fail every fucking time.
Yeah, I'm not that nice. I
Is
can't
that Rick
pretend to be.
Reckless?
Yes. I mean, you've probably faced at a tabletop event, and you're not aware of his internet fame.
I am. I'm. No, I've got no idea of his internet fame.
Okay. Well, currently in the
I've heard a few things here and there that he gets quite a few people watching.
well, I'd say the
each
number
day,
one
but-
streamer in Blood Bowl right now is Andy Davo. I mean,
Right.
he's really built on Blood Bowl 3, built up his YouTube presence at the moment, and that's cross-fertilizing, and he's getting the big numbers right now.
So,
but
Dave, do you play a lot of Blood Bowl 3?
No.
Okay. I just wonder if there's anybody who could make a decision, who could look at Blood Bowl 3 at its high level, and maybe something like the Tackle Zone or Super League. I mean, in Super League, in my league in Super League, I could go down that top 100 coaches in the World Cup, and there's a who's who on Fumble. Just recently, you play Straum, you play Store, you play Statistical, you play Triple Skull. It's never ending. I think,
Yeah.
my goodness, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I assume you have that in BB3. I wonder if there's someone that could make a sort of a comparative between the two, how strong they are compared to each other.
I think you're slightly misunderstanding Blood Bowl 3 right now. It's been described variously as a dumpster fire, as a non-competitive fun format, and as an in-development game, still very much in early access, waiting to be released in the near future.
I guess my question to you would be this.
Developing
My question to
issues.
you would be this. How do you feel about 2300 TV Blood Bowl as the standard? What do you think about that? Is that like where the best balance is? Because if you don't think it is, there are some issues right now in the format. They didn't
Okay.
implement
So
redraft yet.
teams
so
live forever.
it's,
There's no redrafting. They can grow to whatever size. It also doesn't matter if you lose games. So you can sit and
Currently,
lose
no.
your first 50 games. It doesn't matter. As
And
long
that
as you,
team can
as long as
still
you can
advance to
then
the top
put
of the
a
ladder.
win together of 20 games after that, you can still end up at the very top.
20-0, 50, no problem. Just develop your team and then basically smash in people from a low rating and climb up. There are a number of flaws with it competitively. It's not I mean, if you're talking about like
I would struggle to use the word competitive with anything in Blood Bowl 3 right now.
yeah, hence the flaws and so forth. But I if you look at like the talent amongst like the high end coaches, it's still there.
Yeah.
As with anything, high end talent is high end talent, but it's more scarce than you'd care for it to be. It's still probably stronger than like local tabletop metas in most cases, at least speaking maybe from an American perspective, but maybe on a broader one.
I mean,
But-
it for sure is, but given a list
Yeah.
of Blood Bowl 3 coaches that were at the top of the system of Blood Bowl 3 right now,
Yes,
I would want to have a look
the
through
top.
before I would agree that that's a bunch of competitively good people at Blood Bowl. Because it's quite possible to get there whilst not being any good at Blood Bowl whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess in my head I
not
still
to the-
imagine
not
that
to
a
the
lot
very
of the Blood
top.
Bowl 2 coaches are just there.
Because at the very
And they
top,
aren't.
in perhaps the first top 20, 30 places, you will end up playing the other
Right.
people there. So staying up there is
Exactly.
tricky. But
Yeah.
certainly getting to a very high ranking isn't, and it's a matter of persistence, not of necessarily Blood Bowl quality. Though it's easier done,
Yeah.
obviously, with good quality Blood Bowl.
Yeah, my largest frustration with it was it seemed to me, at least initially before like a more recent patch, but it seemed to me like if I wasn't willing to commit 100 games on one
Yeah.
team, it kind of was a waste of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to play, 20 games across 5 different teams,
And
then you end up with 5 different rankings. So it's ranked based on a single team, not on a
that are
coach.
all far too low. To be clear, far too low to be relevant.
And as Andy said, who's done a blinder of keeping Blood Bowl 3 going and making it seem somewhat interesting to people. The top 15 are published by Cyanide, but we don't know outside of that who's even in the top 100.
Yeah.
So that information is kept from us.
And to their credit, they've made some corrections on that. The SR gain like throws you further out now, and you don't need 100 games on one team. And it's not all doom and gloom. I'll be honest
No.
with you. Like I'm not afraid to say that I think the game has potential, and coming back to it in about 4 to 5 months might be a good time to start picking it up and actually moving forward with it, even from a competitive perspective.
And
whilst the implementation,
whilst
redraft
this
and
may
everything
sound
is-
fairly damning from me, Cyanide said from the very start They're going to invent a system and then tweak it over time to give us
Yeah.
what we need as a competitive system. So this is very much their first idea, and it will run through changes and evolve and hopefully become something a bit stronger.
I
But
don't mind the blatant imperfections.
I
I
think
just
what
they
needs to
need to keep
be
with it.
massively brought into any discussion of Blood Bowl 3 is its absolutely awful launch. And because of that, what Cyanide need more than anything else is numbers of people playing and games played. So it at least is on the Steam charts, at least it's getting people on it. And they've built a system that prioritizes volume of games. So that
I
works for them.
actually,
It puts numbers into the playing of the game. But they've
yeah,
started
in
to realise
theory,
they've made their season too long, and actually the numbers are
yeah,
massively dropping off. People have sort of said, all right, it's
yeah.
time for something new, or I'm not playing.
Also, in theory, I think it's worth noting, like, how many people do you think that pushes away? Because for the number of people you get that play 100 games and pump those into the system, how many people are just like 100 games? I'm not even going to start one.
Me,
I'm going to go play Fumble. I'm going to go play
Yeah,
my local tabletop league, right?
there's your problem,
Right.
isn't there?
yeah.
There's a
Yeah, and
problem.
who would blame you? Who would blame you? Right now, I'm like 30 games in, and I still don't want to touch it.
I mean, if you can't attract me, I mean, all right, I am famously quite lazy. I was managing to qualify for the Blood Bowl 2 finals with 20 games or less.
I'll be right back.
But if I need to play 100 games, I'm not in for that. I mean, I might play 100 games during a season, but I want to do it over multiple teams or multiple different races. I'm certainly not going to sit down and go, right, it's 100 games with Dwarves or 100 games with Dark Elves this season. That just doesn't interest me.
Well, that's terrible, isn't it? But you compare that with create a team, play on Fumble, be in a league with half a dozen people who are on some of the best Euro Bowl teams going. I
Yeah,
mean, there's no comparison.
nope, none. It's not at the moment what I would consider a competitive environment. But it has the potential to be, obviously. They can change it
Yeah.
as the game develops and as they get. There's also only 13 races now, so that's very limiting in itself.
I like to try and maintain some degree of hope because I think that, not that Cyanide deserves it, but I think that at the end of the day, I believe it will get there eventually. I genuinely do.
Yeah, and of course the Blood Bowl, 2 wasn't that great when it launched, and in the end it ended up quite popular. But its rule set's now 10 years old. We needed to move on, and just like I'm not a huge fan of the Blood Bowl 2020 rules, but I am a huge fan of the fact that the rules changed because they needed to, and that we moved from the ossified CRP, brilliant as I think it was, and that we have now a game that's alive, that's attracting new people in, and that will continue to change and grow. I think Blood Bowl 2 needed to die, and Blood Bowl 3 should be better, hopefully will be better, but is the future of online Blood Bowl.
You asked pre-meeting, pre-call about the explosion of numbers. What was behind it? Is Blood Bowl more popular than ever? And the answer is, well, yes, it is. I mean, we've just got huge
Yeah,
amounts of people playing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's because of the fluidity of the rules, and GW supporting it.
yeah,
Ridiculous amount of games being played. So we needed the rules changed.
yeah,
GW don't make the game unless they create a system that they can make money out of, and then they make money out of it by changing it every 4 years.
yep.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, but that's great because it brings in talent, brings in people left, right, and centre. So
Speaking of
we've only
which,
got
does
them
that
to
mean we're
thank for the
due?
game getting more popular.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're due for a rule set change in like a year or less?
Well, we might
Yeah.
put people in an awkward position, but the rumours I've heard from some playtesters, who I will not name because they're all under NDAs and I'm not.
Of course.
Exactly, that's why I'm not asking you, Paul, and I'm not saying anything about you, and you're not someone that ever leaks to
Yeah.
me. I will happily reveal that. But a couple of people do talk to me, and I'm not hearing talk of a new rule set being playtested yet. Now, maybe
That's
they're
good.
just not telling me, but I'm not hearing it.
Or maybe you're asking the wrong playtesters. Who
Maybe I'm
knows?
asking the wrong playtesters. I had hoped so, because obviously we had JTY replaced with Jay, who I have a bit more faith in for building a rule set. So I had hoped we might see a 24 rule set, but I now
Jay
think it's
is
likely to
a
be later.
Jay
I
is a
wouldn't.
really nice bloke who is a very competitive Middle Earther. He's one of the best Middle Earthers around. He's on the Team England for Middle Earth,
Right.
whatever the system's called. He has some limitations because there's a GW man basically saying we've got to change X amount of things because of commercial reasons. But Jay is really keen on a super competitive super balanced system, and he seems capable of providing it.
Well, shit. When you say it like that, I want him to take over, and I want a rule set change suddenly.
He
Not that
has taken over. It's whether he
Great.
gets to when he gets to produce the next rule set. I think we all know one will come.
He's not in charge of when the next edition, if there is a next edition, is released, but he's in charge of.
If someone at Games Workshop says we need a new Blood Bowl edition, that's the person they're saying it to tomorrow, and that's the person that will be making it for us.
Maybe like something like you know how Dungeons and Dragons went from like 3rd edition and then moved into 3.5, which was really like a half edition advancement where they just basically made a bunch of rebalancing and retuning. Maybe something like that. Just something that's like a half measure, not a complete revamp again, but simply an overhaul and rebalancing, retuning. Maybe a couple of new applications would be lovely.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree, though, that one thing that doesn't need changing is the fluff, which is, of course, the highlight of the current 2020 rules.
Yes, I love
So,
that.
for those that don't get that joke, it was said famously, apparently by JTY, to a friend of mine when he had left Games Workshop, that the thing he was proudest about in the Blood Bowl 2020 rules was that he had finally given some fluff to Blood Bowl, a game with no backstory and no fluff.
What? Okay, no.
Now, I didn't hear that. I wasn't there. But my goodness, I hope that's true, because what a thing to say. Yes, Mike, I did say I was going to raid them off so that we can all disappear. I just thought, actually, tonight it was quite nice to keep them here for a bit, and they can see.
There you go. Mike Davies doesn't like you guys.
That we all chat after the show sometimes, and that the minute I tell people the show's off or the cameras are off, everyone just relaxes and it gets a lot more chatty. Which I can't. If I started streaming, if I then put this bit on YouTube, which I won't, I will end it at the wave as I always do. Then people wouldn't relax after show. So, I can't. You can't win. We can't have this. You can't have this. You can occasionally glimpse it, but I can't give this to you. But everyone's much nicer and much more chilled than they are during the actual show. Sorry. Right, let me find someone to actually raid them onto.